And today we have Alonso Alpagadas is back to teach us on herps. And as you know, Alonso is the natural resources manager for the study, and he also has this great blog. I still say, if you're stuck on a topic for your 5-minute presentation, I'm sure you can steal some stuff from Alonso.
It's a few hundred pages.
Yeah, a lot of good stuff. So anyway, since we're running a little late, I'll shut up and let Alonso talk. So, thank you, Alonso.
Thank you. All right, folks, hey, and one more thing. Don't forget the City Nature Challenge is April 27th to 30th. You guys hopefully will make some entries at Huntley Meadows on the last day when we're going through there. But there's maybe 20-some different things that Armin is involved with throughout, in a lot variety of different places. So sign up for something, get out there, and enjoy the outdoors while at the same time providing some citizen science, some data mining information. All right, so folks, again, my name is Alonso Alpagadas, and again, the Natural Resources Manager for Arlington County, and as well as the Capital Naturalist. As it turns out that apparently the further up the food chain you go, the further away you get from doing what you like to do. So from being a regular, everyday naturalist, I somehow ended up at headquarters, which, Casey will tell you, is not the wildest place. Out my window, I used to be the manager over here for a while. I had that view. Now it's the parking lot, and well, anyway, you get the idea. So one other thing I did want to mention, besides the shameless self-promotion, is also that I am not a herpetologist, all right? I'm a pretty good generalist, and since the topic is the most common reptiles and amphibians of the DC area, I think I'm pretty well stocked in the knowledge to kind of do that.
Aren't most generalists invasive?
Yeah. Oh, I've been called worse. But touche. So I'm definitely not a herpetologist, but I'll tell you how this kind of came about. So when we were first putting together the Master Naturalist classes, this is what, over 10 years ago, right? So Fairfax County well, they're 11 then, so 1 year before you guys. And we were setting up the programs, and I happened to be part of the original committees to get speakers. And we had a very, very good speaker lined up who was I don't know if he was a professional herpetologist, but was an excellent field researcher. And so it was like, we'll get him to do the program. However, as a backup, we thought, just in case something goes wrong, we'll always have a backup instructor in case one of the instructors, something happens. So I said, well, okay, I'm okay with reptiles and amphibians, I'll be the backup. Little did I know that the very first class, he couldn't make it, and I ended up being the backup. And I had collected a bunch of notes, and that eventually became the book that you guys all have copies of. And I guess I did a well enough job that they allowed me back again. So just so you know, I am not a professional herpetologist, but I certainly know enough, I think, of the common stuff. And since the common stuff is what you're likely to see, I think we're pretty well off. Hello, folks. How you doing? So let's start off first of all, like as in most ways that you do stuff in taxonomic order, talking about from primitive to most modern, realizing that does not always mean that the animal is better or anything like that in any way, but just the way that in order that we think they may have evolved. Okay. Now, before we get going with that, though, let me just start off with the more primitive of the two groups, the class Amphibia. Now, here's something interesting. As on your cheat sheets that you guys have, there is a mistaken idea that herpetology has always been, amphibians and reptiles. In reality, they took the amphibians and the reptiles, and because they had a couple of common traits, they stuck them all together into the study of into the study of these general things. So long ago that does anybody? It's actually on there. What herpetology actually means? The study of crawling things. So basically, they lumped these groups of crawling things together, and because they have a few good similarities, they're all ectothermic, cold-blooded, if you will. Okay. They lack fur and feathers. They're all vertebrates, so they all have a backbone, right? But then after that, there are a ton of differences. But because of those similarities, we put them together. So we're going to go with one of the classes under that are considered herpetiles. So one of the things that and that's the amphibians, all right? And before we go into discussing specifics about amphibians, a question for you. When you think of the word amphibian, what do you think of?
Land and water.
Land and water, okay. Didn't raise your hand, that's okay. Land and water, yeah, okay. That's what most people think about. Now, let me tell you that it's a little bit more than that. The actual word amphibian comes from the Greek for two lives, all right? And so if we look at the absolute typical amphibian, there's more of them than anything else. The frogs and toads make up the biggest group of all the amphibians. And if we look at them, this will give us a very good idea of what was actually meant when they talked about amphibians, all right? So when you look at a frog or a toad, these are animals, again, that usually have to lay their eggs in the water or above the water, or sometimes it's tied with moisture. That's for most amphibians, but most especially frogs. So you end up with this frog, and it goes over to the water, and the frog lays eggs, okay? It lays the eggs, the male fertilizes them, and they're usually inside the water. From that watery beginning, out comes out a tadpole. Tadpole is Anglo-Saxon for toad head. Some people call them pollywogs. That just means wiggly head. All pretty apt names because it looks just like a head with a tail on it. Unlike fish, after the first couple of days, there are no external gills. You don't see any gills after the first couple of days, and you don't see any scales. You don't see any fins. Okay, but it still breathes underwater, and most tadpoles, and I guess you guys have probably figured out in natural history, you can never say always, right? There's always an exception. Okay, so most of these feed on plant material or decaying detritus, whatever's rotting away at the bottom. Okay, so it starts eating, it's breathing underwater, and it's eating plants underwater. The more it eats, the more it grows. It starts to undergo the process, which is also very typical of amphibians, metamorphosis. Meta means change, morph means shape. It's changing shapes. First thing that happens with frog tadpoles and toad tadpoles is outgrow the back legs. Back legs always first, okay? And even though it's got the back legs in there, it's still breathing underwater, and it is still eating plants. So as it eats more, of course grows more, until the bigger changes happen. And then you get the front legs. And that's when the real metamorphosis happens. Because from an animal that found it easy to breathe underwater, now in most cases, this animal was having a hard time breathing underwater, okay? And where you have an animal that was happy to eat plants, now you have an animal that doesn't really care to eat plants anymore. And that's when the second life begins. Because soon you get the final change into a froglet or a toadlet. It doesn't eat for a couple of days because it's lifted off its tail. Eventually the tail gets absorbed into the body, and you end up with a frog or a toad. And this is the real meaning of amphibian, two lives. Because you went from a water-breathing, plant-eating animal to an air-breathing, animal-eating animal. Okay? So yes, it lives in the water and on land and so forth, but the reality of amphibians is it's a lot more to it than just being able to hop in and out of the water. Okay? And this kind of shows you that. By the way, it doesn't work in reverse, it'll turn back into tadpoles. But okay, so there you go. And if we look at that, it's the typical, as I mentioned, the absolute typical amphibian. But we actually have three different orders of amphibians. We have, just under, and as you guys also probably know, taxonomists, they love to mess with names and stuff like that. The names in your books, in fact, many of them were re-changed again over this last couple of years. And so it's always this constant stuff as they come up with eugenetics and they try to standardize stuff and whatever, that the names are constantly changing, okay? And the agreement as to how many species change. You got the lumpers that just put a bunch of them together and say this is good enough, this is what the species is, and the other ones that look for every tiny little difference and either call it a subspecies or they think it's big enough to call it another different species. But most people agree that there's probably just under 8,000 kinds of amphibians around the world. And the vast majority number of them, as I already mentioned, are the frogs, a much smaller number of salamanders, and we also have an unusual group of animals called the Sicilians. There's about 200 of them. None of them live around here, so this is the only time you'll hear about them. But they're very unusual amphibians in that they usually lack legs. Okay, most of the times their eyes, if they have any, are just very little spots that detect light. They tend to have these segments, but it's not like dividing up. It doesn't really divide up the body. And many of them give live birth. Okay, now Live birth meaning only that they hold the eggs inside, the metamorphosis takes place inside, and out comes out a smaller version of the adult. I remember, again, my only personal experience with these guys was when I used to work at a pet store. We had a couple of these that came in, very unusual animals, they're pretty big. They called them Congo Eels. Of course, not even eels, but hey, they look fish-like, they look like an eel. Hey, it's a Congo eel, okay? Sounds a lot cooler. So, I had these Congo eels, and I remember I left one night with a very fat Congo eel, okay, Sicilian. Came back the next day, and there were 3 of them, one big one and 2 small ones. What had happened? And of course, it gave them live birth. So, I mean, they're pretty unusual things, but since we don't have them locally, that's the last you'll hear from me about this neat kind of group of amphibians called the Sicilians, right? So then we look and we find out that Virginia is just species rich with amphibians, okay? And we're going to learn a little bit more about that. But as I've already mentioned to you guys, or maybe I haven't, you guys are lucky enough, and I'm lucky enough, to try to learn about natural history in what's probably one of the best biodiverse areas in the country, okay? One of the best places in the world to really take this up. And the reasons for that are a multitude. Starting with that we're at the northern limit of the southern animals, so many of them, this is as far north as they get. We're at the southern limit of many of the plants and animals, okay? Both of them. And so we get a lot of those that are just barely reaching as far as us. We're close enough to the coast that we influence, we get some of those animals going here. But the rivers especially bring in a lot of the mountain plants and animals right down to us. So along the Potomac, for example, is some of the only places where you see certain plants and animals that are mostly restricted to the mountains. But guess what? They got washed out here and they end up being able to survive. So to be a naturalist, what a great place to study nature, okay? And Virginia in particular is really blessed with a whole huge number of what it has. Now, I also do the Maryland Master Naturalist classes, and I love to point out how, you know, as far as total number, Virginia has 84, Maryland has 41, okay? Almost twice as many. And you'll see this as we go along, that Virginia always has many more reptiles and amphibians in almost every group that Maryland does, okay? There's lots of reasons for that, and we'll talk about it along the way. I just usually tell them, well, Virginia's better than Maryland, but that doesn't always go as well with the Maryland Master Naturalists for some reason. But hey, the truth's the truth, it hurts. So we're going to continue, but now you get a basic overlook at these kinds of things. Oh, so another thing. So what makes amphibians amphibians? Yes, many of them go through this metamorphosis. They all, I can't say all, see, always did it again. The general rule is that they have smooth, membranous, permeable skin, glandular skin. So their skin can absorb different kinds of things. Their skin oftentimes gives off different kinds of chemicals. And again, a lot of things can transpire, can go in and out through their skins. In fact, many amphibians breathe through their skin on a process that's called Valerian respiration. So we'll see a little bit about that. So those are all generalities about this. Most of them are tied to the water simply because of the moisture. In general, by the way, and this is very much a general rule, reptiles can take the heat better, amphibians can take the cold better. Right? So that's a little bit more about these guys. Let's continue on. There's a couple more things, but I think I can tie it in later. Just so I can switch off of one slide. We don't want to be here the whole day with just one slide. So we again go in taxonomic order, and we'll start off, of course, with the most primitive and work from there. And the more primitive of the group, of course, is the salamanders. The easiest way to think of a salamander is that it looks like, most of us are familiar with lizards. It looks like a lizard, but it's got no nails, and it's not got no scales, okay? All right? No nails and no scales. There are no claws on salamanders, and there are no scales on salamanders. Again, remember, they have that glandular, permeable membranous skin, okay? And so they're very, very smooth. Many salamanders start off with life in the water. We'll take a little look at that, and these are just some of the most common. And here's something that's really neat, I think. So, depending on who you listen to, there's about 700 or so species of salamanders worldwide. Of those, Virginia has 56, including several that are endemic. They only live in Virginia, all right? Compare that to the 21 in Maryland. Now, most people, when they think about biodiversity, what they think of is rainforests or the oceans. Most people may be familiar with some. The tropical reefs are just incredible in numbers. And that's true for a big part of it. I mean, we just can't compete here with the number of species of trees and whatever and insects. Having said that, though, Virginia by itself has many more salamanders than most countries do. okay, than most countries do. So when people actually go to study salamander diversity, they don't usually go to Latin America and the biological hotspots that you think of. Where they go are Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky. That's the hotbed for salamander diversity in North America. So we're really lucky that we have so many in here, and several of them, as I mentioned, are very, very specific. So there's a lot to this, and one of the questions, of course, is, well, why? Right? Well, it has to do with these guys are not very mobile. It doesn't take much to isolate these things. All right? They are crawling from place to place. Remember, they are absorbing things through their body. Okay? They are very susceptible to the sun. So these guys, it doesn't take much to isolate them geographically to one place, and then a river can be a huge barrier. In some places, just the sidewalk is enough that they can't get up and over, and that's what's going to limit them. Okay? They don't travel very much. Some, like this guy in the northern slimy salamander, the white spotted salamander, they spend their whole life in a 10-yard area. Okay? That's their whole world is 10 yards, the whole life that they live. So they don't go far to begin with. And so it's easy for these things to isolate, especially in geographic peaks, like the Shenandoah salamanders and the peaks of otter salamanders. Where do you find them? Well, at the peaks of otter. They're up there, they're isolated, they can't get away from there. That is where they've developed. So we have some very endemic ones where, because they were isolated and couldn't get to other populations, they speciated. We ended up with a whole brand new species. All right? So anyways, it's a pretty neat thing. We have a lot. Yes, ma'am.
Really quick,
Yes.
there's a salamander trail
Uh-huh.
there in the Shenandoah, and there
Mhm.
are salamanders. When I hiked it, we thought it was named for a guy named Salamander,
Mhm.
until about 2/3 through, we started picking up rocks and crap with salamanders.
Yeah.
Anyway, salamander trail in Shenandoah Park.
Very, very cool. And it's a very, very cool thing. Now, I will say, the higher it go, the better your odds, because it looks a lot like the red form of this guy. But they're very, very cool. And again, nowhere else in the world will you see it. You got to go to Shenandoah to find them. I mean, and Virginia is special in that way. We have a lot of really, really neat things that no one else can claim in the world. Okay, kind of a neat place. Like I said, it's a pretty cool place to be a naturalist. Okay, so continuing on though, and the inferiority complex for Maryland, we will continue on and look at some of the different specifics about salamanders. So we will start with the biggest of all of our salamanders. The biggest local salamander we have is the spotted salamander. And spotted salamanders, well, pretty easy to identify them, right? They're a dark salamander with spots, okay? Usually it's 2 rows of spots, but I've seen some that have so many spots that they practically look yellow. I've seen other ones where they lack spots and are practically melanistic. In fact, you see a lot more really, really dark ones, probably because they hide better than really, really light colored ones that are completely covered in yellow. So it's quite variable, so variable that in many study sites, they take pictures and identify individual salamanders and can track them how many years they've been coming in to use a particular site. Why? Because the spots are very, very distinctive. Okay, so no two. Well, I'm sure there may be 2 salamanders that have the same pattern of spots, but they don't find them in the same populations, and so they can identify individual salamanders and populations by the spots that they have. So a very neat salamander. This salamander is a mole salamander. Mole salamanders is a family of salamanders that live underground. Now, remember, no claws, right? So they're not good diggers. Most salamanders that are terrestrial use other animals' burrows. They're not good at digging themselves. A couple of exceptions, but so what they do is they use other animals' holes and tunnels. Just so you guys know. So that's important. It's a big salamander. They live in there. I don't think these guys done any wetland ecology yet or whatever? Not sure. You guys done wetland ecology? The wetlands, water? Not yet? A little bit? Okay. So,
Going to Huntley.
well, you go, okay, that's true.
Yeah.
We're going to Huntley, and in Huntley you'll see a lot of what they call Burnham Pools. This is a Burnham Pool species, and Burnham Pools basically is a temporary body of water, okay? It's a spring pool. It comes in, it fills up with water, and as long as it holds water for 3 months or so, that's probably the dividing line. Anything under that, it probably doesn't give enough time for the animals to develop. But about 3 months or more, as long as it's for that long, and for the most part does not have any fish, then you develop a whole cadre of different kinds of animals that live in that particular system. I had great luck. This is only the 3rd time I've been out in the field with them, but just this weekend, Mike Hazlett, who's in charge of the Burnham Pools Society of Virginia, and he's well known along the East Coast, got a chance to hang out with them again and go meandering, looking at vernal pools and all this and that. And they're very, very special. The animals that go there have to have some very, very specific adaptations. So I'm going to tell you this now because it holds for every other vernal pool species that we're going to talk about. In general, vernal pool species have to have a mature woodlands nearby, and then you've got the waterway. You know, you've got the pool that they live in, right? The pool should dry out every year, okay? But it should hold water for at least 3 months or more. If it doesn't dry out, a lot of times other animals end up living there, and that's not good, okay? Not good for these guys. Plenty good for the other animals. But one of the things that, of course, permanent bodies of water usually end up getting is fish. And fish love to eat vernal pool amphibians, okay? Especially the larvae. This is just like a huge treat for these guys. And so, when they're forced to lay their eggs in permanent ponds, survival rate, the mortality rate is ridiculous. They really can't succeed in keeping a population growing over the years, okay? So they're very specific of where they want to look, what they look for. They look for a temporary body of water, someplace that's gonna hold water for about 3 months. So that's what they go and they aim for. And the rest of the time, as I mentioned, are most salamanders. They're living in the woods, underground, in other animals' burrows, in a mature woods. Right? That maintains the moisture and all this and that. But a triggering event, usually several days of rain or good steady rain, the temperature being above 50 degrees or so, and that is usually enough to trigger these animals, and most vernal pool animals, into starting their breeding cycle. And it's pretty amazing. Basically, on this little signal, and again, some of us try to outguess these things, but it's very difficult to have like a vernal pool program where you actually are there for what herpetologists call a big night, because a big night, you may think it's a great big night, but if they don't agree with you, it's not a very big night. Okay? So, trying to second guess when it's going to rain for a sustained period of time and be over 50 degrees, you can make a guess, and sometimes you're right. Most of the time, there are other factors that they're looking at that we don't quite visualize, and so we don't get it. But when that happens, these animals come in huge number all to the vernal pools. Usually they're same natal pools, where they were born. Okay, they think that they go there for a couple of reasons. One, they can probably chemically detect where their pool is. All right, and they can do that because remember that the glandular skin, they can just absorb it and feel, chemically detect what's in there. They can. And one of the things they think that they detect more than anything else is certain kinds of algae. All right, because this algae eventually covers the egg masses, and they think it's a symbiotic relationship where it doesn't just provide cover, but also oxygen for the developing young, okay? And so you have the eggs either clear or white, and they form this algae on them. And the algae, guess what? It's very, very specific. I don't think I wrote it on there, but it's in the book. It's very, very specific. The only places you have them are in vernal pools and almost always attached to larval egg masses. So they're able to detect that, they come back over there, and you know what else they can detect through their skin? The presence of fish. And if they have no choice, they will sometimes still lay eggs with their fish. Most of the time, that's it, okay? They decide it's not a good place, and they look for a better location. But sometimes there's no better location. And that means that sometimes they either don't lay eggs at all, and that happens. If you never have the right conditions, a couple of years ago, it didn't rain throughout February and into March, okay? In April's too late, they don't lay eggs in April. And so guess what? They reabsorbed the eggs, and there was 1 year there were no spotted salamanders born in Arlington County, okay? So that's a problem. But see, the reason that they do this is their timing has to be critical. They want to get there just as the pools are filling with water, because now they have a race in time. They got to go from a gilled larval salamanders breeding underwater to adult before the pond dries out. If the pond dries out before that happens, guess what? They're all dead. Now, granted, they can speed up metamorphosis, but it's at great cost to them. Vernal pool species can turn over quickly if they're given enough time. And not only that, but if the water stays there longer, they can actually stay in the water longer. So it's responsive to the stimulus that surround them. But here's the thing. If they mature too early and still are able to absorb change over, metamorphose and absorb their gills and all this and that, they're so small that now either other things can eat them or they're not a competitive disadvantage. They're at a competitive disadvantage. They can't eat other things as well. Okay, they're not big enough. So that's a big disadvantage for them. So they gamble. They lay their eggs as soon as they can, early in the year. The earliest I've ever recorded, ever was January 31st. Most of the time, it's late February, the first couple of weeks of March. That's the key time for vernal pool species. They come in, lay their eggs, they're there for a couple nights, and then they're gone. Where are they gone? They're back in the woods, and you probably will not see one the whole rest of the year because they're in the ground someplace, unless there's a heavy rain or they get washed out somehow. Okay? So very, very cool, our largest salamanders. Now, also, going in general with salamanders, so salamanders, every salamander is predatory. There's no such thing as a vegetarian salamander. Okay? They all eat other animals, including each other. Salamanders are notoriously cannibalistic, all right? Notoriously. In fact, when you have a bunch of them together, well, first of all, you shouldn't. If you have an aquarium, you shouldn't have a bunch of them together because you end up with one or two very, very healthy ones, okay? But if you have them in packed conditions, you'd be amazed. Most of them are missing chunks out of their body. Some are missing legs, toes, gills, eyes. But the neatest thing is, of all the vertebrate animals, I am unaware of any of them which has the regenerative abilities that salamanders have. They can actually regrow legs, they can regrow eyes, they can even, there's been some that have been damaged to brain damage, organs, and they regrow them. Every species is a little bit different, but they're able to do this. Almost all of them regrow tails and toes, okay? So it's kind of a neat thing, and people are trying to study this. Because if we can figure out, how does this thing regrow an arm, an eye? I mean, this is something that, of course, would be wonderful to be able to reproduce so that we can, of course, advance our own medical abilities. So, again, it's remarkable how good they are, but big salamanders eat little salamanders, and that's another reason that they all gamble to put their eggs in there first. Because the one whose eggs hatch out first, guess who's going to be the bigger one? Yeah, they have a competitive advantage. But here's the gamble. You lay their eggs too early, and it doesn't rain enough, you're done, okay? You lay your eggs too early, and there's not enough water to their surface, they freeze, you're done, all right? So they gamble, and the good thing about most vernal pool species is they live for a very long time, and they're explosive breeders, okay? The record so far, I think, for spotsman is 27 years. They could probably live longer than that. We just haven't kept one longer than that, okay? But 27 years. So there's enough good years to make up for the lousy years, and you keep a stable population, because they lay a few hundred eggs at a time, right? Yes?
So the algae mass collects around the eggs?
It grows and it's embedded almost all the way through it, especially on the clear ones. So on the ones that are white, they don't embed as much, but because these are clear, the algae can be involved almost all the way through. Most of it is on what they call the mantle, this layer that holds the eggs together. If with a spotted salamander, you can actually pick up the eggs and they retain their shape as they're in a mantle. If you pick up the eggs and they kind of flop and all fall all over the place, then it's frog egg mass. It's not one of these. And we'll talk about that frog later too. But yes, so it's embedded. It grows throughout the different things, and eventually this all falls apart. But it's incredible how tied they are to that algae. Pretty neat. Yeah, yeah.
So for the algal growth that happens with those eggs, is that for all salamander eggs, or is
Nope.
that just for the spotted ones?
Okay, not just for the spotted ones, but for most. So for most mole salamanders. So
Okay.
a couple of the ones here that are in this family, they're the ones who seem to be able to do this. By the way, they think it's the same thing that also wood frog salamander eggs do as well. Problem with that is they develop a lot faster, so they may not be as, the evolution might not be there to support them as well, but they'll use them. But not all salamanders. In fact, many salamanders don't lay eggs, as we'll find out, so it doesn't help them. But it is for that. Yes?
I don't know if you would mention this later, but do we have axolotls here?
We do not. Axolotls in the wild are restricted to Mexico, and specifically the last that are left outside the pet trade. Okay, they're restricted to the canals and the areas all around Mexico City, where they were worshipped as an interesting one. It's a pretty. It is a salamander that never comes out of fully into its adult shape. Well, actually, that's not true. If you remove them and you put them under certain lab conditions, you can actually get them to turn into a adult salamander. which is weird because in the wild it
It's
doesn't
bad
happen.
for them though.
What was that?
I've heard it's bad for
Oh,
them.
they can't reproduce. They can't. It's
Yeah.
done. It's a dead end. So
Yeah.
they can't do anything. So they're built to always stay as a larva the whole life. But again, they're endangered. If you can imagine, the waters around Mexico City, not the most pristine in the world, and you know the waters around any city are not. But you know, especially such a city as huge as Mexico City. So they're way on their way out. But luckily, at least they've been studying and collecting many of them in captivity, and they breed really well. We figured out what the stimulus is to get them to breed and all this kind of other kinds of stuff. All right, so they're pretty neat little critters, and just so happens that they have one here, unless I let it get away. And as it is a mole salamander, guess where he always goes? To the bottom of the pile. There you are. All right. So, come on, you. This is dechlorinator water, but I want to wet my hands and also get some of the gunk off of them so you can get a good look at them. This one's probably only 2 years old, so it's still very young. It'll get much bigger than this. But the aptly named spotted salamander, right? Yeah. This is an adult, but it's probably too small to reproduce yet. But this, and there's hundreds of them out there, folks, underneath the soils, living in the burrows of things like voles and worms and junk like that. So neat little
Why isn't it trying to run away?
Salamanders are incredibly slow. So, believe it. Oh, of course.
10 yards, 10 yards.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is nothing. Again, this one's only a couple years old. They can get to about 6 inches, a little bit longer than that. Oh yeah, you can see them. That's called the little flap that you see on its throat going up and down. That's called guttural breathing. It's basically them pumping air. But like most salamanders, this thing can also breathe partially through its skin, as long as the skin is wet. But it really is more of a thing. Yeah, and I'm not going to let people touch them and stuff. So that's the other thing about just amphibians in general. Most are very poor specimens for handling because that permeable skin is easy to damage. You can, if your hands aren't wet, you can dry it out, and that's the end of, that's the end of that critter. Also, if you have anything on your hands, okay? So you sprayed yourself for mosquitoes, sunblock, whatever the case may be. So we always, teachers always say, we're going to roll over logs and pick up and show salamanders to people. That's not really a great idea. If nothing else, definitely don't let the kids handle them. But again, spotted salamander, they're very Oh, did I skip you?
Yeah.
Oh, it's Ian's table, never mind.
Oh, you're
They covered it like a...
There's these glands that come out.
I wasn't wrong.
You weren't, no.
Oh, you're so cute.
So they're really cool little animals. And again, you can see it's not exactly a speedy animal. Now, so how does it keep out of trouble? Well, some of the glands that come out of it make it taste really foul, particularly to mammalian predators. So raccoons and foxes take a bite out of this and it's just nasty, okay? Now, of course, raccoons and foxes being very smart animals, some have figured out that, once they get run over by a car, the outsides are terrible, but the insides are delicious. And some have figured out to rip them open and just eat the insides. So, these animals, it is something that they do protect themselves. So many of these things, they can be slow and this like that because they're just tasteful to a variety of different animals. But not to all. Of course, that's not the case. And in particular, the mammals have a hard time eating them, but birds don't. So, barred owls here and red-shouldered hawks, they oftentimes station themselves. In fact, there's a red-shouldered nest. You guys ever seen a red-shouldered nest? All right. Pretty good reason is near the pond, okay? Frogs, there, this time of year, the vernal pool that you guys are passing away up, loaded with frogs. In fact, I've got on game camera a picture of one getting picked off, as well as the barred owls that are sitting there waiting for them to come in there. It's horrendous. And the worst part is, though, they start running the gauntlet between the avian predators. I remember one time I went over and I heard something coming, so I hid behind a rock, and along there, after a little while, there were 7 raccoons circling one pond. these guys, and again, the spotted salamanders, not so tasty, so not as big of a danger, but the frogs had to jump through that gauntlet to get to the pool. Why? Too many raccoons, okay? Too many raccoons. So I mean, there's always a balance in everything, and you ring the dinner bell. These things are normally solitary and hiding in there for a brief 2-week period of time, maybe. There are hundreds in one single spot. That is ringing the dinner bell to every predator. Okay. Okay. So vernal pools are like that in that way. Okay. So we're done with this. Probably on to the next slide, but hopefully we covered a lot of basic things about these.
Do they make sounds?
Most of them don't. There are some salamanders that hiss or do this, but in reality, almost all salamanders, almost all are silent. And I don't believe spotted salamanders are anywhere. I can't think of any of our local salamanders that make any sounds. Could be mistaken, but I don't know of any. Yeah. Okay. No question?
How do they catch the feathers so slow?
How do they, what was that? Oh, well, okay, they're so slow in front of them, but you know, getting away from things, but their reaction time is right in front of them is pretty quick. So basically something is crawling in front of them, it moves, they snap out. Some of them have, there's some salamanders, because they're so close to the frog, they have very long tongues and they grab them with their tongues and pull them back in. But in most cases they grab it, you know, and sometimes if it's really big, it's kind of like a little dog, it's kind of neat. They shake it up and down, hit it against the ground, whatever it is, kill the thing. And then they swallow it that way. But, you know, it's got to be like 2 inches away from them. Then they see it, and they'll stalk it and whatever, and then wham, they lunge over, grab the thing, and eat it. But as far as getting away from predators, notoriously bad. Yeah, even in the water, they'll dive down low, but they're not real good at it. Okay. So this guy, like I said, like most vernal pool species, this guy comes in there and he's gambling against time. He's coming out as early as he possibly can to lay the eggs, so the eggs are there, and he can get a jump start, not just before the pool dries out, but hopefully against all of the other buddies in there, because they can then serve as food for him. Okay, so the first one in there has the best chance of doing it. But we have different strategies to this. Also, notice the size of this, 4 to 8 inches long. 6 inches is usually more typical, okay? But 4 to 8 inches, that's a big salamander. Here's another salamander, sometimes lives in the same area as them. How big does he get? 5 inches. This is the marbled salamander. Marbled salamanders, the males have especially a white on black look, and the females have a gray on black look. They're, again, another mole salamander, so they live underground. They come to the vernal pools to breed, okay? We don't have any of these in Arlington anymore, but they're fairly semi-common in Fairfax. Now though, if they use the exact same pools as the much bigger spotted salamanders, big salamanders eat little salamanders. That would be a problem. So these guys have evolved an interesting way of getting around that. And that is, they don't go to the vernal pools to breed as the vernal pools are forming. They go to the vernal pools before the vernal pools are formed. They lay their eggs, they go to previous year's vernal pools, where oftentimes they're native pools where they were born, and they find a spot about halfway up the bank, okay? And they lay their eggs in there. Oftentimes the female will wrap around the eggs to keep them moist and so forth to protect them. And they lay there so they can lay their eggs in early winter. And then when the rains start coming, when they reach a certain point, they don't put them at the very bottom of the pond, because then one big rain, they come out and it dries up and they're gone. They put it about halfway so that there's enough water that finally triggers them, and they hatch and they can go down into the lower water. So by the time the spotted salamanders are coming into the water and laying their eggs, guess who's slightly bigger than them? These guys are. And so they start eating them. By the time the spotted salamanders catch up in size, guess who's coming out of the water? These guys. And that's how they can coexist. In many places, they control the spotted salamander numbers quite a bit, because they get the early jump on eating them before they come out. So that's their strategy. Again, distasteful to many kinds of animals. And again, I should mention about larval salamanders. Larval salamanders are incredibly difficult to tell apart, okay? But you can oftentimes tell which ones live in springs and which ones are spring salamanders, and which ones moving water salamanders, and which ones are not. So salamanders that typically live in ponds, okay? Normally they have a long, their tail fin stretches past the back legs. See how the fin wick over there, okay? And they usually have big feathery gills, because they're trying to get as much oxygen they can of what can oftentimes be a pond that's stagnant and whatever, trying to get air out of there. So that's very typical of pond salamanders. Water salamanders, as well, spring salamanders, brook salamanders, stream salamanders, their tail fin does not extend past past the back legs, and they have very, very, very small little gill on them because they live in oxygen-rich water and so forth, and they don't want to have something that can be dragged away. They're usually a lot thinner and everything else than these guys. Okay, so again, they all eat each other. Very, very cool animals. Now, if you have to learn one salamander, this is the one to learn, okay? The redback salamander. Why? Because it's the most common salamander in the whole East Coast, okay? And in many places, it's by weight the most common vertebrate in any, in most given rich forests, okay? They outweigh anything. There could be dozens and dozens of them in one area. Now, these are interesting in a lot of different ways because, for one, their whole family of salamanders are lungless salamanders. They have no lungs, they breathe right through their skin. Again, something called balloon respiration. Right through their skin. That means their skin has to be moist and also limits their size. They can't be really fat, they can't be really long because they can't, that way they would not be able to get the proper amount of oxygen. Their skin really does have to remain moist and so forth, but when you roll over a log at the right time of year and you find a salamander, most of the time, guess which one it is? It's this guy. Now, it's incredibly variable. For a while, they thought there were multiple species. The bigger ones they thought about was that there was a redback form, but there was also a leadback form. One that had a red stripe and one that was just dark. And for the longest time, they actually thought that these were two different species until they found out that the same batch of eggs can have both of them. In some places, the leadbacks are more common. In other places, the redbacks are more common. Probably has something to do with, the habitat itself. In other places, you end up with orangish ones. And some people think the orangish ones mimic or just happen to look enough like Fs, which are a toxic newt, and that protects them. So they come in a variety of different forms. But most of them either have a red stripe down the back or just plain dark the back. And if you were to look at their bellies, they have this peppery, this peppered little look on their bellies. So they're very neat little animals. They're woodland animals. They live in woods, and that means they never go to a pond. Right? I don't know how many people put them in ponds. Okay. Oh, I found a little salamander, put a little thing. It's so far away from the water, I'll put it in water. All right, first of all, considering they don't go further than about 10 yards, you just pretty much isolated him away from his territory, and he is never going to find his way back. And then, of course, you throw him in the water, and he ain't such a good swimmer, and so he will drown, okay? But it takes him a long time to drown, because again, he can still breathe through his wet skin and stuff like that. So anyway, very neat little animals. All the metamorphosis takes place inside the egg. So what comes out of this little grape-like cluster of eggs that's inside an old log or something like that is a tiny, miniature, little tiny redback salamander. Right? Huntley Meadows, and I think at least one time with Arlington, at least one time with Fairfax County, we were over there and we had a very, very great discovery, I thought, okay? And that was, we were going through there and we rolled over a log, and I was teamed up, I think I teamed up again with Cliff, right? So Cliff and I were we were tag teaming this together. And Cliff, of course, is a wonderful naturalist. He's your bug guy, but you're gonna notice he knows a lot about everything. He ain't just a bug guy, okay? But he was mostly bugs, and I was mostly herps and fine. So at one point, we're rolling over logs. He's looking for salamander food, bugs that the salamanders will eat. I was looking for the predator, which is much more interesting. But that's what he was looking for. He rolls over a log, and he goes, "Oh, cool! Here is a redback. A two-line. What is this?" And I was like, wow, if Cliff can identify, those two species, this is something cool. So I came over thinking, oh, well, I was like, this is unusual. So I went through all the possibilities in my mind, and I said, there's only one thing it can be, and it is a leucistic form of a redback salamander. So one that basically was missing the red pigmentation, and so it was basically a light-backed salamander or whatever. Very, very cool. So looked it up after we got home, I looked up all so I don't know if you guys know that I'm also on the state team for Virginia Herpetological Society under ID team and stuff and whatever. So anyway, looked up the records, and lo and behold, if at that time there hadn't been 5 other times that someone had found a leucistic salamander, right? 3 of them at Huntley Meadows Park. So apparently that little gene is there where that statewide is pretty weird, but the gene is trapped there, probably in a very, very small portion of the park, but there's where that salamander is, okay? So this guy though, it does teach you a couple of different lessons, and one of them is you can go in there, and if you go at the wrong time of year to do like a survey or whatever, even though it might be the most common salamander or the most common vertebrate in the whole woods, guess what? You may not find even one of them. Why? Because if you go during the dry season, you go in June or July or August, you're probably never going to find one. Why? It's too dry. So they estivate. They go down way down underground where it's more stable moisture conditions, and they go into a dormancy. For reptiles and amphibians, when it's a heat-caused, dry-caused dormancy, okay, it's called estivation. When it's caused by cold conditions and so forth, it's called brumation. A lot of people use the term hibernation very loosely, but hibernation is pretty much restricted to mammals, and it has to do with the way that they weigh, especially how much fat they form and all of this kind of stuff. There are very, very few true hibernators. In fact, I can only think of one local hibernator, and that would be the groundhog. Other things, I mean, a lot of people think like bears are hibernators. Well, the mama bears are having baby bears, okay? You know they're not sleeping through all of that. So guess what? It's not really hibernation, okay? Those animals are active when it's warm enough, okay? So it's brumation in these animals, and also it can be estivation if it's too hot, which is why when you do studies and things like that, and you guys I hope will participate in citizen science studies, like the City Nature Challenge on April 27th to 30th. You know what? You guys will probably realize that some things will be very common, but the way you design your study is incredibly important, okay? Because it could be the most common thing and you completely miss them all because you went on the wrong day. They weren't home. Okay. Yeah. Oh, thanks.
Sorry for that interruption.
Thanks, Casey. Okay, so moving on then to other kinds of, so timing is very important whenever you do any of these kinds of studies, and we'll learn more about that kind of stuff. Another big thing, okay, so if you want to know the most commonly encountered water salamander, this is the one, the two-lines. And two-line salamanders basically have a dark racing stripe along each of their sides. They can have, oh, I need to replace that, here we go. So a dark line right along both sides, right along the ribs, okay? So that's that. And notice the larva, the tail fin does not extend past the legs, and it's very skinny and has very, very small gills. So two-line salamanders, by default, are the most common salamander in creeks. And you know why? Because they're the most tolerant of the worst conditions, okay? They can take the warmest changes in, if you're an ectothermic animal, a cold-blooded animal, changes in temperature can really affect you. These guys can take the worst temperature fluctuations, like when rainwater comes in off of hot sidewalks and parking lots, and so they can take that. They can take the most salt in the water, which from salting roads and things like that for the wintertime, they can overlook. They can take the best pollution conditions. So in many places, by default, they're the only salamander left, okay? So this is why, especially in urban areas, when you find a salamander in the water, it's going to be this guy, okay? And they are mostly aquatic salamanders, although you'll find them on land near the water as well. So very, very neat. They're very popular food with many different kinds of animals. But again, if you find a salamander and it has the two dark sides to it, it's this guy, the two-line salamander.
Could they be considered indicator species?
All of them are. So great segue for me. I was going to go with the frogs, but since he's brought it up now. Amphibians, more than anything else, are incredible bioindicators, and it has to do with, again, that skin, the membranous skin that can absorb stuff, this permeable skin, right? And if we go back to our example with the frog, let's see how this kind of works. You have to remember that a frog, and again, I'm going to have a hard time getting it back to the tadpole form, but you have to remember that as a tadpole, as a polywog, as a larva, it is eating plant materials and is absorbing water through its skin. Remember, it's got internal gills, right? So the water, anything in the water over its lifetime is being absorbed through its skin. While it's eating plants, anything that the plants have absorbed, guess what? It's also accumulating in the animal system. But then worse than that, when it becomes a frog, it's still got that permeable skin, so if it's crawling along and whatever makes contact with its belly and so forth, that can also be absorbed into its system. But now, the bugs that it's eating, if its bugs have gotten contaminated in any way, guess what else accumulates in our system? So it's a double whammy. It gets hit as a larval plant-eating animal in the water and gets hit as an animal-eating animal on land. And that's why they make fantastic bioindicators. When something starts going wrong with the frogs, you have problems with that system. So many specialists and so forth, they look at first at these sentinel species, these kinds of bioindicators. Look at them first, because if it's affecting them, it soon is likely to affect many other things. So you look at the most sensitive animal first, and that's what this guy is. That guy less so, again, because he's a little bit more tolerant, but this guy most especially. Yes, ma'am?
So is it because it's ingesting these things, or I was thinking it was
Absorbing and
that
digesting.
it was not able to eliminate
It-
through
it-
its filtering processes, like the kidney.
Yeah, and it depends. Again, it depends. Sometimes it's accumulating and it's not. So not only is it absorbing it, and in many cases, if it's absorbing it, it's oftentimes something that's more toxic. And again, it doesn't have a good way of eliminating it. In its food, yes, a lot of times it may be able to clear out its system, but oftentimes it can't. And that's why when it gets to a certain point, some are more tolerant, like this guy, but frogs in particular, not tolerant at all. And so they absorb it through their skins and they ingest it in whatever their food may be. And as it accumulates in the body, especially in the older animals, that's when it starts to be a problem. Sometimes you can tell when and what is being affected, because if it turns out, for example, you guys have heard of those, three-legged frogs and junk like that. Okay, so this is happening in the larval state before it turns into a frog, so it's more than likely something in the water rather than on land. So little things like that can kind of cue you in. But again, these guys are pretty good. Some of them are very good at eliminating things and have protective ways of getting around it, like these guys. But other ones, like frogs in particular, not good at eliminating any of that stuff out of their system. It accumulates. The older the frog is, the more chances it's got these chemicals inside of it. All right. Okay, so moving on that happy note. So the most common frogs, and no questions about salamanders, right? Good. Okay, so let's move on with the frogs, because we got a long ways to go still. So these are the most common kinds of frogs. We'll talk a little bit about them. Notice again that surprisingly, Virginia has 28 and Maryland only has 20. By the way, that 20, one of those is an introduced species, so not that doesn't count. Okay. So the absolute most common frog, pond frog, anywhere in the East is the green frog, okay? And green frogs, first of all, I hope you learned right now that one of the most variable things in any population is color. And look at us, okay? So the bad news is almost every field guide you go with, what do they depend on? Color. If you depend on the absolute most variable factor as a primary identification feature, not a good thing. So green frogs, yes, many of them are green. Some are brown, some are mottled, some are dark, some are bronze. That used to be a subspecies. Okay, so there's all these different things to it. Okay, but again, think about that. It's variability. Don't just go with color. That's not the way to identify things. Go with a bunch of other factors. So remember, I think the Bluebell Festival for Riverbend was this past weekend or whatever. When I used to work at a riverbend or whatever, I used to go there and people would say, oh, we saw these beautiful white, bell-like flowers all over the place. Oh yes, those are Virginia bluebells. No, they were white. Yeah, there are, but you have that many of them. There are white and pink and other color Virginia bluebells. It's just that most of them are blue. But they're stuck that it's gotta be blue or it's not a bluebell, and that's gonna be complete. So whenever you look at your field guides and stuff like that, keep in mind, color is a great field mark. It should not be the only field mark you depend on. Right. Okay, so green frogs can come in a variety of different color forms, but most of them are kind of green. Right? Oh, and by the way, frogs can change color too depending on circumstances, mostly environmental conditions. So when they're really, really dark, they're cold. When they're really, really sick, they're yellow. When they're really, really happy, they're bright colored. Think of it as a mood frog, okay? And it's really, that's especially the case of tree frogs that can vary their color dramatically. Right. So this is the most common frog that you find in pods. Yes?
Will color change also based on the toxins and things that are in their system?
It can be, especially if it's sick. So remember, if it's a yellowish frog or whatever, it may be that its color is responding in this way, but it could be that because it absorbs something and it's not sick, and that's why it's doing it that way. So yes, most of the time it's a variation of dark and light rather than so dramatic. But in tree frogs, it can be very dramatic, the color change. All right. So anyway, this is the typical pond frog. If you ever walk by a pond and you hear a as it's jumping in, followed by right down the line another one going kerplop, plop, 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 all the way down the line, they're green frogs. Usually hear them before you see them, and so these things, when they jump, they're notorious in giving us a little squeak, as they jump, and that warns the other ones down the line. So a lot of times, if you hear someone go whack, is jumping into the water, you just missed seeing a green frog. Okay?
And those are just the female ones though, right?
Well, actually, for the emergency call, it's male and females.
Right.
Most of the time. Okay, well, we're going to get to that. We're going to get to the call thing, because that's pretty neat. So back to this little guy right here. So there's a couple other ways. It looks similar to a couple of the frogs. The big thing to look at is this dorsolateral fold. See that fold of skin that goes down the back? If it goes most of the way past the back, then that dorsolateral fold, then that's a pretty good sign that this is a green frog. Okay? In green frogs and bullfrogs, it's also very easy to sex them. Once they're adults, males have usually yellowish throat, but the easiest way is the size of the tympanum, the eardrum. Okay? If the eardrum, the tympanum, is larger than the eye, then it is a male. And if it's the same size or smaller, then it is a female. That's only true for green frogs and bullfrogs. So, male or female? Male. Yep, bigger than that. Male or female?
Female?
Male. So that's bigger than that.
Oh.
So yeah. So males. And so that holds true for these little guys. So again, the most common type of frog. This is the most adaptable. It's also a fairly decent sized frog, and that helps it quite a bit as well. Oh, I should mention. So again, I told you guys, they basically changed all of the classifications of all these things. So many of the old field guides, everything like that, you will still have these listed as rana. All the frogs, all the pond frogs will be listed as rana. I remember, getting into this, the first thing they always told you, as an naturalist, what you need to do, learn the scientific names, because common names, they can change all over the country. A scientific name, no matter what country you're in, that's what it is, and they don't change it. You can be speaking to someone from another country, this is the name that's given to it, and there's no problem with common names. So, that was a good thing. And for me, even better, because some of these names, I'm Latino. So when it's based on Latin, hey, that's a big plus. And rana means frog in Spanish. So I'm like, rana. Well, it's a frog. It's a pond frog. Now they changed the whole thing. So ranas are old world species. So the North Americans, South Americans, Central Americans, they're not rana anymore. Some of them, most of ours are lithobates. What the heck is that? I don't know. But just so you know, all the names have changed, but many of the field guides you're going to find still use the old nomenclature, even though it's completely changed. Okay, but they've standardized. Okay, so this is the biggest frog that we have, and bullfrogs are big, and they break all the rules with frogs. Okay, for one, most frogs, it takes one growing season for them to go from tadpole to adult frog. Okay, one growing season. Now every once in a while, the green frogs get a late start, and they'll lay their eggs so late or it gets cool. And so they'll stay as a tadpole over winter and change the next spring, but most of them don't. For bullfrogs, it takes 2 or 3 years for them to change over, and they're the largest of all of our tadpoles. Up north, it takes about 3 years. Here, it's about 2 years. So you've got these big old tadpoles that metamorphose over. So that's one thing. They break that rule. In most frogs, the females are larger than the males, and this is true of many reptiles and amphibians, but not all, but bigger than the females. Why? Because a bigger female could hold more eggs, okay? So it pays for the female to be larger, so you have better reproductive success. Okay, not in bullfrogs, where in bullfrogs, because bullfrogs bully each other, okay? They wrestle, and the bigger frog wins the wrestling matches most of the time, it pays to be a big male. And so guess what? In this race, in this species, the males are larger than the females. In most species, as someone has already alluded to, the boys make all the noise, okay? Okay? If you hear a chorus of frogs or toads, you are hearing the males, okay? One exception to this are the bullfrogs again, where every once in a while, for some weird reason, some females make noise. So they break all the rules. It's the biggest frog that we have, and again, something that's a super predator. They'll eat anything smaller than them. I've seen them eat snakes, I've seen them eat mice, I remember one time over at Mesa Neck, I was walking with a group, it's a summer camp group, we're taking them through there. Like, oh cool, look, there's a red-winged blackbird that lands, it's going to land. You say it landed, it's going to get a drink. And it lands at the side of the pond to go get a drink, and then whoop, frog gets it. And I mean, it's just a red-winged blackbird's a big animal for a frog. So here comes the big struggle. As you know, we were talking about this beautiful thing, and it's like, okay, well, different lesson here. So it's a big struggle as the kids are like, oh my God, you know, well, it happens. It did get away, but they'll eat anything smaller now, okay? So this is important to realize, because here is something I should let you guys know, and that is, this is a native frog, okay? It's native to permanent bodies of water. Native does not mean that it's found in all places, okay? It's not mean that, okay? Big frogs eat little frogs. And we have this thing where we decide that we want to restore. I love all these things. The Natural Resources Manager, they ask me to do all these restorations, okay? Restoration implies that you're returning it to a former state. It's not inventing something that you think would be nice, okay? And so, but people aren't patient for that. The best thing to do if we had a lot of things is we would treat an area, clear it for invasive stuff like that, wait a year to see what comes up so we don't accidentally spray it or pull the wrong thing, and also to see what the ecological memory. You guys got Charles Smith? Is that going to be
Next
there?
week.
Oh, okay. Charles is a good one, okay? He's good. He will explain to you guys much better than I can the concept of ecological memory. But the bottom line is that there's a seed bank in there, and so you want the stuff that was in there waiting its chance that now there's no competition for it to come up. Now, if you're digging, planting, and doing all this other stuff, you're destroying what was supposed to be there just because you want instant satisfaction. And with us, it's one of those things, they want us to do something, we clear out an area, and they want it for us tomorrow, okay? So they want us to replant this whole thing. Where much, much wiser would be, can we wait a year, see what comes up, how does it heal, what's gonna come up on its own, rather than, you know, and I love it when people say, oh, well, you need to put this there because it's native. Is there proof it was ever there? If there isn't, are we really calling it a restoration? And many things that we think are native are not. Purple coneflowers, they are native, not to the DC area. But what's one of the first things they put in almost all native plant gardens? Purple coneflower. It's a cool plant. But technically it's not native. All right, so you get the idea. This is one of those animals that people love to move into different places. But when they move it into a place where there's just small frogs, frog species, guess who's the winner? And this guy, they put him into so many different places that we've, unfortunately, this is one a very common frog, and it's costing many other frogs, causing them to be extirpated from those certain ponds. And there's a good reason for that. Or a reason for that. One really cool thing that people always talk about, of course, is how kids, of course, it'd be wonderful if they learn about, you know, the metamorphosis cycle. How cool is it to actually watch that happen in a classroom? So people will do this, and unfortunately, this is the most common frog tadpole that you can find. Why? Well, if you're setting up a pet store aquarium, remember I used to work in a pet store, you do not want to change out the aquarium system 1 month later because the frog is changing into a frog. You didn't have time to sell it, whatever. You want something big that can stay there for over a year. You don't have to change the habitat. You don't have to figure out what to do with it or whatever. So almost all the frogs that are sold in captivity are ones that take a long time to change over, metamorphose, and that includes the bullfrog. So we had this issue for a little while here in Arlington and in some other places locally where people would, hey, let's grow a frog. The kids get to see the metamorphosis. They buy a frog, they buy a bullfrog, tell the kids of all this great things that they're going to notice, and then school year's over, and what do you have the next year? A tadpole, because it takes 2 years for them to change over. Well, you obviously can't kill your class pet, right? So you illegally dump them into a park where you're not allowed to take anything and not allowed to leave anything. But that would be the wrong thing to teach the kids, right? So you let the animal go. Sometimes a nice little ceremony like that, not knowing that you've either maybe introduced a disease, we'll talk about that, or you've introduced a super predator and now all the small frogs in there, not gonna be doing so good. We actually, here in Arlington, made a deal with some of the science-based schools and whatever, that we would provide wood frog tadpoles, which is a vernal pool species, so they only take 2 months, not 2 years to change over, and that we would release them and so forth. Now, that comes with some caveats, as we'll get into, but that's way better than the stuff that this little pond over here, the stuff I pulled out of that pond because people come in there to release their pets is ridiculous, okay? And that includes, you know, we used to have gray tree frogs here, okay? I'll show you. When I first started here 20-some years ago, we had great tree frogs here. Then people put goldfish in the pond. And now there are hundreds of goldfish in the pond. But you know what we don't have anymore? We don't have great tree frogs anymore. Because goldfish like to eat great tree frog eggs. So, okay, that was, not a good thing, but somebody wanted to release their pets into the pond. Yeah.
Do bullfrogs have any predators like
Oh, yeah.
raccoons?
Yeah, raccoons and herons and whatever, but they're big enough that they outgrow a lot of these other predators, and so they themselves are a major predator in the pond system. Okay, but yeah, I mean anything that can kill something that big, that's a pretty good sized meal. Yeah. Oh no, it's Ian. Yeah, go ahead.
Do American bullfrogs really make a good bioindicator? Because it seems like they're a lot more tolerant to a lot more things, especially with what they can eat, even though they're absorbing things through their skin. They eat so much that it seems like they wouldn't be as good indicators.
So it's a balance type of thing because they live longer, and so they're in the water longer, so they're exposed to things longer. But again, they're also one of the things that these tadpoles will sometimes eat other tadpoles and dead things, whatever. So the answer, I think, is it depends on what you're looking for. So they can still be pretty good indicators, but because they're so adaptable, they're probably much less than some of the more sensitive animals. You always look for the most sensitive animals first, and this will be true. You guys are probably going to learn about macroinvertebrate studies and stuff like that. You learn all about EPT, okay? The mayflies, the stoneflies, ephemerata, Placoptera, Trichoptera, caddisflies, all of that. And you're going to notice you look for these sensitive species. Why? Because they're the first ones to go. You don't want to wait until the really tough things are going, because by then, it's probably way too late. Okay? So you look for the more sensitive things, and this would not be one of them. You're right, this would not be one of them.
So so if you introduced a bullfrog or something like that into a pond or like a river system, obviously they eat everything.
Yeah.
So what would be the next best indicator if they were to eliminate the species?
Well, you're right. You're really messing things up for the future. And these things have been introduced. In fact, let me tell you, so people might have heard of Calaveras County Fair. Calaveras County Fair, you get this little circle. Frogs got to fit on a circle because there were people cheating with African Goliath frogs, which were too big. But anyways, in this little circle, and we measure the 3 best jumps, you win, you take home the kitty, right? The world record, the Calaveras County Fair record is by a bullfrog from Maryland, Rosie the Riveter. I think that's a pretty good name. Rosie the Riveter, who 3 best jumps was 23 feet 10 inches, which is amazing, okay? Having said that, there aren't supposed to be bullfrogs in California. And our big bullfrog loves to eat the red-legged, smaller California endangered frog. Just one more complication for the red-legged frogs out there. Thanks. And beginning with Maryland again, a Maryland bullfrog, okay? We got to be real careful, folks, with what we do, okay? It may seem like something completely harmless. Somebody releasing these things after or something like that, and locally you cause a local extinction extirpation, okay? All right, so anyways, these are bullfrogs. They're very, very tough. You get the idea. Oh, identification. Well, let's look at this picture. It's much easier. So, I already mentioned the green frog. If the dorsolateral fold goes partway down the back, that fold of skin, that's a green frog. If it wraps around the tympanum, around the eardrum, then it is a bullfrog, okay? And in bullfrogs, I already mentioned, the male-female thing is exactly like green frogs. The big tympanum means it's a male. So, is this one a male or a female? That is a male, because it's bigger than that. Okay? Is this one? Male. Is this one? Female. And notice that this bullfrog who's courting this female, look, he's bigger than she is, where in reality for most frogs it would be different. The female would be bigger. Okay. So, we have a couple kinds of spotted frogs, not in Arlington anymore, but locally, especially in Fairfax County. If you find them, the easiest way to tell them apart is by the spot pattern. If the spots are mostly horizontal, or rectangular in shape and tend to be in rows down the back, not always, but rectangular spots in usually double rows in the back, then it is a pickerel frog. If they're random spots all over the back and they're round, then it is a southern leopard frog, okay? In Maryland, they have a northern leopard frog too. The difference is about 12 kinds of subspecies, or species, leopard frog. the white eardrum tells our southern leopard frog from the other species that they have in other parts of the world, and other parts of the United States. Okay, so spotted frog, round, small spots. Leopard frog, rectangular spots. Pickerel frog. Pickerel frogs, by the way, some of them are toxic, but only in certain places, and it probably depends on what insects they're eating. Some of them retain it, and they can be toxic, so some things don't like to eat the leopard pickerel frog. Okay, wood frog. Again, where does the wood frog live? In the woods. He's a vernal pool species. He lives in mature woods, and you usually only see him in the springtime when they, and were you guys here maybe a month ago when the frogs were going nuts down here? Oh my goodness, they just, hundreds of them show up. It's pretty neat in this gigantic chorus. The males are smaller, they arrive first. The best way to tell them apart is they have a little raccoon mask, a bandit mask, a dark face mask, okay, spot around the eye. Now again, when they first come out of brumation from overwintering, they can be very, very dark, particularly the females. And so it's really hard to see the mask, okay? But once they clear up and they get warmer, that dark mask becomes pretty evident. Here is a, what did I do? Here is a wood frog. Now folks, I'm sorry, it's a little dirty in here, but try not to shake them too much. Wood frogs, so if you're a pond frog, if there's danger on land, you jump into the water. If there's danger in the water, you can jump up on land. If you're in the woods and there's danger, you just keep jumping. Okay? Okay, so these guys are very, very good jumpers. So since it's in this little container, frogs are notorious for never learning that if you jump, you'll hit your head against something. Toads do figure it out. But, so this guy's, so please be very careful. And if it does start jumping, just let it calm down in a little second before you pass it back on. But I want you to notice again, the little black mask on him. And this is what he looked like a couple of years ago. Here are wood frog tadpoles. These are ones that just hatched. We're starting this side. These guys, these are wood frog tadpoles. These guys are only a couple weeks old. Okay, all of these, those guys will all be frogs by June. Okay, so again, explosive breeders, they lay thousands and thousands of eggs. They're long-lived. They need these temporary bodies of water. Again, enough good years to make up for the bad years as long as the habitat is there, the vernal pool. Vernal pools are getting rarer and rarer because most people see them as mosquito, what good's a temporary wetland? Well, for some animals like wood frogs and marbled salamanders, spotted salamanders, fairy shrimp, water fleas, fingernail clams, the list is just gigantic. It's the only habitat they can live in. It's pretty specialized, but that's pretty special. Okay, so there are of course frogs that live in trees. The Cope's gray tree frog is one of them. And again, gray tree frog, well, that kind of depends. When it's in breeding season, it turns lighter colored, and when they first turn over, they're kind of greenish too. But they have granular skin, almost toad-like. And they have sticky feet, so they can stick the stuff, the sticky toe pads. If you're able to look underneath, you'll see light. I need to get a better picture. I have a better picture. I don't know why I use this one. They have yellow underneath, down in their groin area, so that's a good field mark too, as is the white spot at the corner of their eye. But these are very, very common, and these used to be, again, right here. You don't have any more right here. There's one or two little tiny populations left in Arlington, which we've built some vernal pools to see if we can bring the great tree frog back into Arlington. But again, they're disappearing. Here's a great tree frog. Now, all right, this always backfires. Now look, when working with animals, you can guess what they're going to do, and most of them usually guess right. But I don't know how long, if this one's adapted to people yet. So if you really start struggling, don't worry, I'll get them. But I just want to show you. Again, he's got the sticky feet. He can sit right, he can hang right on there, okay? Again, he's kind of a gray color right now. If I were to show you, lift your leg, show everybody the orange underneath, okay? So again, a very, very cool little frog, and this is about as big as it can. There is a great tree frog as well as this Cope's great tree frog, and they look absolutely identical. Most professional herpetologists cannot tell you the difference, but they're completely different. They have a different number of genes and all this and that, and their calls are very different. Okay. In our area, the Cope's great tree frog is probably more common. You go up into the mountains, the gray tree frog is probably more common. Having said that, there's been some sightings of grays around here too. Part of that probably has some people claim that perhaps all our grays are because some people released pets, okay? But can't be sure. It could also be we overlooked them for many, many years, because guess what? It looks exactly like the other one. So unless you hear them calling, you can't tell. But in general, most of the ones we have in Arlington, Fairfax, or whatever, they are Cope's gray tree frog, which is what this little guy is, okay? All right, so I'm gonna put him back in. Actually, you may let me, no, no, it must be your stomach. No, I want to come by.
I heard something.
Not yet. Well, not yet. Maybe soon. Okay, I'll tell you what. He actually is cooperating, so I'm going to come by and let you guys take a peek at him. He does jump. Again, warty skin, the white little spot in the corner of his eye. Again, the warty skin is kind of a good thing. Pretty neat little guy.
Alonzo, we're losing tree frogs because of habitat loss mostly, or?
Well, I mean, there's a combination of factors. These tree frogs are actually fairly resilient. Yep, he's about to jump.
He's gonna say hi.
Yeah. All right, buddy. Come on. Yeah. Whoop. All right, you're gonna just one more, few more tables and you're done. Come on, show off.
Yeah, really. Oh, there you go. How
Come here, you.
fun.
Okay. It's usually losing his patience. He's maybe
Oh, yes, he is.
Oh, no.
Oh, the neat.
makes a great ring though.
Yeah.
There we go. So last little quick look. About to launch again. Watch the flash. Set him off. There we go. Now come on. Cool little guy. Now, great tree frogs, you can sometimes get away doing this. They depend so much on their camouflage. Other tree frogs, ain't not gonna happen. They're not gonna sit there like that. This one also, I think, they've used them in programs before, so I think he's a little bit more used to shooting. Yeah. He's already figured out a little bit.
Show business.
Yeah. Yeah. This is their show frog. Get down. Oh, now you don't want to leave. Get back.
She's like, but wait.
Okay. Okay, so great tree frogs, again, they can change color quite a bit. They hang in there. These guys can make use of some very aquatic conditions. Now, because they can live in very shallow water, you sometimes get great tree frogs to live in places where there are fish. But a lot of times you can't. Again, this pond is a pretty good example of that not working for ours, but they're pretty neat little animals and very adaptable. Because they have drier skin, you may notice how that warty skin, they can move much farther away from water than other frog species. So these are the ones that sometimes show up in people's windows and screen doors and stuff like that, particularly underneath porch lights, where guess what? Porch lights are attracting the food, so they go out there and take whatever they can. Okay, there you go. And these guys, some we're calling just this weekend. This is a spring peeper, and spring peepers are all peep. This is a full-grown spring peeper, full-grown male spring peeper, okay? This is as big as it's gonna get. He's not a baby frog. They never get big. It's our second smallest frog that we have here locally in Northern Virginia. And usually you can tell what they are because they have a faint X mark on their back. They're named crucifer from a cross on their back. But that is, again, how dark they are. It's not always very plain. But it's there. But their size, that they can climb and stick to stuff, is a pretty good example. Look how small the tadpoles are. Here's a dime. Look how small the tadpole is on that dime. Okay? So pretty neat little guys. These are guys here. They're all peep, 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 peep. I am not bringing this one out because they are very good. And of course, once it jumps up in here, I'm never going to get them. So we'll pass that little guy around too. All right. So done with that. On to toads. Actually, you guys want to take a quick break? Okay, yeah. Quick question, then we'll take a quick break. Go ahead.
They come in waves because I hear them and then I don't hear them, and then I hear them and I don't hear them.
So the males especially are of course eager to whatever time the stimulus comes up for them to go find a female. So when the conditions are right, the males will keep trying and trying to breed, but the females aren't always responsive. But in the springtime, if you have several good days that are in a row that happen, that's great. They're also easily confused. There's something that herpetologists sometimes call the fall echo. And in the fall, sometimes the temperature day length is pretty much what it would be in the spring. So a few males get confused because of the temperature day length, and instead of calling in the spring, they are calling in the fall. So you get fall peepers instead. No, but so you get these guys who mistime them. So they make mistakes, but usually it's in the spring, stimulus controlled. Usually rain and temperature are the big things that set off peepers. And we may still have another good wave of peepers left, but we're getting near the end of the season. Okay, so a quick break, folks. Tell you what, just 5 minutes, please. Then I'll come right back, because I got a lot to talk about, and I need to talk faster now to be able to get all this stuff done in time. So let's talk toads.
for driving.
Okay, so toads. So some herpetologists will tell you that there's that there's not a clear distinction between one. Some people separate the toads out into their own group, some people don't. But for most, true toads are different from regular other frogs in a couple of manners. One, they have much shorter legs, so they're not great jumpers, they're hoppers, okay? The other thing is all true toads have these two big glands behind their eyes. They're called parotid glands. That's where poison comes from. And that's what makes toads distasteful, okay? And so that's one big thing that makes a toad different from a frog, are those two big glands in the back of their head. So we'll talk more about that, but in general, we have two kinds of toads locally, and one is much more common than the other, and sometimes they're easy to tell apart, and sometimes they're impossible to tell apart, and we'll kind of go into that. In general, you see a whole bunch of black tadpoles all schooling together, so they're all in one little bunch, right? They're toad tadpoles. Toad tadpoles not only stick together because they're apparently distasteful or whatever, but they can tell they're siblings. So when you see a big bunch of them, it's all the ones born from the same egg string. That's another thing toads do different from frogs. They lay strings of eggs. And so all of these, this big bunch right here, would all be from their brothers and sisters. They're all from the same egg string. So they hang out together, which is kind of a cool thing. So that's something that's kind of interesting to kind of see. This past weekend was the peak of toad calling season. I went to about 3 different parks this weekend. All of them, literally, just the trilling of the, just all over the woods. Very, very neat. Yeah.
So because they all kind of like hang out together, are they just like social in that way as tadpoles, or do they kind of like do the same thing as adults?
No, as adults, they all find their own territories and things like that. But I will say something about toads. That is, big frogs eat little frogs. Big toads don't like to eat little toads. We'll eat one, yeah, but usually not. Okay? So it appears that, on some different levels, toads are slightly different even in their behavior, everything like that, than their closest relatives to frogs. Some people, again, you don't want to talk about animal intelligence, which just kind of means different things and how do you gauge that and whatever. But I will say, I can have a frog, maybe a green frog or something like that, and I'll hold him or whatever, or have him in a container, and he'll continuously jump and smash his head against the side over and over again, never figuring out that if I jump, I'm going to smash my head into this. A toad, it happens a few times, and guess what? Unless he's startled, figures out really quickly, jumping into that is going to hurt me, and they don't do it. Same with a platform. I put a toad in my hand, and it might jump once or twice, especially if it's scared, but after that, it does not want to jump anymore, unless it's really, really scared. Why? Because it's had that bad experience. It's jumped and fallen. A frog will jump almost every single time. Just bam, 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 even if he keeps hurting himself, okay? So there's also, frogs are much less likely, or I should say, toads are also much more likely to learn where feeding spots are, okay? So you put in some bugs or whatever in a frog tank, and the frogs, the regular frogs, they start looking and hunting and chasing them down or something like that. A toad, a lot of times he stands up, he sits there, and he waits. Why? Well, it's a tank. The food will eventually come around to you. No reason. So they're actually prone to obesity because they'll eat so much and they don't move. They figured out this is exactly where I need to be. They also figure out something else. Porch lights.
Yeah.
They will figure out toads are much better. Frogs will do it to some extent. I've seen that in my own house. But toads, they figure out the lights bring the bugs. I will sit underneath there and the food will come to me. And you'll see sometimes 3, 4 of them, which normally you don't see that many together, but they're not competing with each other. They're just the first one that gets the food as it falls down. So they do seem to figure some things out. Whether that's that they're smarter or not, whatever, I don't know, we want to go there, but it is an interesting little observation. So, okay. More about toads then. So we have toads, and the most common toad we have is the Eastern American toad, okay? And American toads And again, they changed the genus. Almost all toads used to be bufo, now bufo, except now there's a couple of bufos in the United States, marine toad and stuff. But most of them now, most toads are in that group that they call Anthidus. The best way to tell American toads from the other kinds of toads, the Fowler's toads, is if they have spots. If they have spots, you're in great luck, okay? Because what you look for is, does each individual spot have 1 or 2 warts in it? Or does it have more? If it mostly just has 1 or 2 warts per spot, it is an American toad. If it has more than, it has 3 or more warts per spot, it is a Fowler's toad. Now things get complicated if it doesn't have spots. Because yes, you could look for warts on the legs and how close together the spurs are to the actual parotid glands. Really, really tough, okay? If that was tough enough, okay, there's this. And that is that toads will mate with just about anything. Probably where the term horny toad came from. Literally, they will form these breeding balls, okay, where the females are larger, where one female, they'll actually drown her because there's 5 or 6 males piling up on top of her, trying to get into the classic mating position for amphibians. It's called an plexus, the smaller male on the back of the female, so that when she lays the eggs out, he fertilizes them. But they'll all try to get on her back and drown her, and it happens more often than you'd think. I've seen them wrapped around poor little salamanders, wood frogs, anything that comes up, sticks, you know, your finger, you know. I took a video not too long ago, and they, with a GoPro when they were trying to jump on top of the GoPro, okay? So, they'll do all of these kinds of things. So, that also means that they will mate with other toads, including the Fowler's toads. And then you end up with something which is a little bit of one, a little bit of the other one. Can't tell them apart. Usually American toads come out first, Fowler's toads come out later in the season. The calls are different from one and the other, but there is, you know, if a Fowler's toad happens to go by a chorus, actually when you have a whole bunch of toads, it's called a knot of naughty toads. Guess what? They, they will mate. They will mate with that Fowler's toad. So you end up with all sorts of different confusing kinds of things. So hybridization, particularly in places like around the McLean area, really hard to tell them apart. Okay, but if you have spots, you're lucky. All toads lay strings of eggs. Okay, and when they come out, they're usually very dark, almost black. So here's the other one. Here's the Fowler's toad. Much less common, likes more sandy areas. But if you notice the spots, each spot has more than 2 warts in it. Okay. If they have spots, it's the easiest way to come apart. They also usually have a little line down their back and a spot on their chest. But these are all, maybe, maybe not. So that's the best way to come apart. Now, before we go on to that, so we have a toad here, and I'll tell you some of the things we do. So, of course, using animals and things like that for programs is a pretty neat thing to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually show you a couple of things that we do when we do animal programs. Let me take this little guy, and one of the things I like to tell, especially when there's a group with a teacher and stuff like that, is when you hear a chorus of frogs or toads, you're almost always listening to the males. The males, the boys make all the noise, okay? The girls do not. Now, there are such things as quiet boys, but not very many of them, okay? So, we can sometimes use that to our advantage. So again, first of all, this toad, as you notice, unless I scare it, it's not jumping, is it? Okay? I could never do that with a regular frog or whatever. But this one's been in captivity long enough that he knows that unless I really scare him, if he jumps, probably not a good thing. Okay. Now, is it a male or a female?
I
don't know.
can't hear it.
Well, and you wouldn't be able to tell just by seeing, okay? However, again, this is a toad. If I move too much, their eyes, I'm going to try not to move too much because their eyes lock on something, and so when you move, their head starts to, and then that sometimes disbalances them and they try to jump. But anyways, so these toads, what we can do, I do it with kids and a lot of stuff, is we can ask it. On a count of 3, just ask it. Are you a boy? And then listen, and then we'll see if it answers. If it answers, then yes, it is a boy. If it doesn't answer, It might be a cold boy. When they're cold, they don't make as much noise. Or it could be a female. But most of the time, if it answers, you'll know for sure that it's a boy. So again, folks, on a count of 3, you say, "Are you a boy?" And then just listen very carefully. Okay? 1, 2, 3.
Are you a boy?
You gotta listen.
Yeah.
There we go. Let's try that again over this way so you guys get a better listen to them, okay? So on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Are you a boy? Now listen. So you are a boy? You sure? Okay. So you can have that conversation. Now, of course, I'm not the great toad whisperer, although, you think so? What it is, of course, is that this toad is giving a distinctive response.
He's
Okay?
hungry.
I just mentioned not so much hungry. Remember I told you, hey, toads will make just about anything. Well, in these big breeding concentration, these knots of frogs, sometimes a boy frog comes along and another boy frog tries to mate with it. And he doth protest loudly. So this is called the release call. So every time I touch his back, think of it as just the button. If I touch his back in just the right spot, guess what he's going to do? He's going to chirp and tell me, get off my back. Okay? Yeah. So that's all it's doing, okay? It's just, that is its release call, okay? So there is that. So toads, by the way, have lots of ways to protect themselves. I already told you about the poison will come out the back. And if they get sick too, a lot of times they'll let all this, it's like the last trying to defend itself. I see a whole bunch of milky stuff all over the back of a toad, I know it's gone or something's happened to it. It's dead. It's dead within an hour. But they also will pee on you, okay? That's another big thing. And again, you have to be ready for that, especially if you pick up a wild toad. It'll pee on you, and that just becomes part of your program. Unlike, because they have much thicker skin, you can get away with touching them whatever a toad than you would a frog. You might hurt it if you're not careful, okay? Because they don't try to jump as much or anything like that. But it's still, you have to be a little bit careful with it and try to make sure you don't have, it got tired of me. And you know, they have these kinds of things to protect themselves, okay? So what we're going to do now is something else we do with the toads. And that is, okay, I'll let you breathe for a second. And that is toads and frogs, for the most part, eat in a very interesting way. So their eyes are very good at seeing things move, okay? They are set up for motion, okay? That's very important. Because haven't you ever wondered, there's this great big blue heron, there's this big bird sitting there, and there's a frog there. If you were the frog, you'd probably figure either you get the heck out of there right now, or you don't move. But the frog just doesn't move. But eventually the frog moves, and the heron takes him. Why? Because what's a heron do? He sits there, and he doesn't move. And as far as he's concerned, once he doesn't move enough, he doesn't register the frog. So when the frog or fish finally moves, guess what? He gets him, okay? So we do a little thing with a little feeding demonstration, because they also, their eyes are set up for seeing food that way. There could be a really well camouflaged piece of food right next to him, but if it doesn't, if it moves, he's gone. There could be something so obvious sitting next to its foot, and if it doesn't move, he won't eat it. There's only a couple of kinds of marine toads and clawed frog, dwarf African clawed frogs. Those are the only ones that eat stuff that don't move. Most of the time, if it's not moving, they can't see it, okay? So if it does move, though, it looks right at it, and when it moves again, out comes the tongue, and in almost all frogs, and pretty much in all of our frogs, all our local frogs, the tongue and toads, the tongue is attached at the front of the mouth. So it can reach out, stick to the food, brings it back in again, and then it has to swallow it. Unlike you and I, it does not have the same kind of throat muscles to swallow the food that way. So what it does instead, especially if it's a big piece of food, is it pushes the food down, and it does so by using the back of its eyeballs. So that its eyeballs pop in, push the food down, and then pop back out again, okay? Which is kind of neat. You tell the kids, it's like, hey, it's like chewing your food, your eyeballs. Now, of course, you do have some kids that will doubt you, okay, the veracity of what you're trying to say. So we will try to show you a demonstration now. Now, for this to work, I always tell the kids, here's the thing. You have to turn invisible to the frog or the toad. Because if it sees you, it's not going to see the food. So how do you turn invisible to a frog or toad? Don't move. which is the hardest thing with kids, okay? So we get them around. I usually have a toadstool, okay? I put the toadstool down there, put the toad on top of it. Everyone gathers around and say, this is what the toad's gonna be, can you see it? And then everyone's nice and quiet. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, I put the worm down. If the worm moves, it gets eaten. If it doesn't move, it doesn't, it stands a chance of surviving. So we will do the same thing, but of course there's you guys here. So what we're gonna do is, what you guys didn't know is your table now is ground zero for the frog eating demo. So we're going to get rid of Doug's stuff. And this is gonna be the dinner table. So if you guys don't mind, gather around, okay, one more demonstration before this, and then we're gonna all gather around so that you guys can see where my hand's gonna be, because that's where the toad's gonna be. I'm gonna try to do a feeding demonstration, and you have to watch very carefully to see how it eats. But one other thing is, I usually do with kids. Again, I use that toadstool, and I put it over here, and I said, look, the frog and toad rolled again. There's lots of ways that things try to get away, and toads have short legs, frogs have long legs. So let's do an experiment here and see how far our toad can jump. And so I say, is anybody here really good at catching things? Oh yeah, I'm really good, whatever. You call them up there and go. That's the first lesson, of course, in school is learning not to volunteer for something until you know what you're volunteering for. But this is how this school's an all-learning type of thing. So they volunteer, you get your volunteer victim, whatever you want to call them, and you bring them on up and you let them know. Now, if you're doing this, you have to do whatever I tell you to do. Are you afraid of toads? No. Okay. No matter what I tell you to do, you're going to do it. Now, if you pick your victim right, your volunteer right, and you can read them, egged on by all of his friends, he will have no choice but to participate. And what you do is you put him down there and goes like this. Is what we do. I'm going to toad over here, and I don't want him to jump off and hurt himself. So can you catch him if he jumps off the toadstool? He goes, well, yeah. You're pretty good at catching stuff. Yeah. Okay, well, let's make this more interesting now. Put your hands behind your back, open your mouth and say, ah. And there's this big look, but if you pick them right, and because this kid, peer pressure is a wonderful thing, they will eventually encourage him to sit there, and you get him as close as you can to the edge of the container. You put him over there, and everyone, it's amazing how great you get everyone's attention. And they're all like here, and go, okay, we're gonna do this, I'm gonna see how far it jumps. Now remember, you might be worried. And the guy goes, oh, whatever, I know why you're worried. You probably heard that toads have these 2 glands in the back of the skin that's poisonous. But don't worry. I mean, it's not going to kill you or anything. It might make you a little sick, but only if you chew down on it and lets go of some of the poison. So just don't chew down on it. Now, again, if you picked right and everything's good, you still got his attention, you got it there, and now you got everyone's attention. And they're staring and staring. You put toad down. Go, you ready? Yeah. Open your mouth, say, ah. And there's that cringe and whatever, and everyone's looking. And then, of course, you poke the toad, and how far can the toad go? 2 inches. Very anticlimactic, but it gets the point across. Lots of things want to eat frog legs. Not too many things want to eat toad legs. Okay? All right. So you think you can make your getaway, huh? All right. So we're going to do this. Since everyone gather around, we're going to use this table. This is going to be a dinner table. Gather around so that you can possibly see. Oh, you guys can stay here. Yes, they're going to gather as much as you can. I'm sorry, there's no real good way to do this. Because kids, you can pile them on there, and the bullies go to the front so they, get a better view. But that's, it's different. Okay. All right. So, yeah. Okay. So if everyone sees, the toad's going to be right here. Okay. It's going to be facing this way. Okay. And our food of choice today will be mealworms. These were cold from the fridge, so I have to warm them up a little bit. So this one's the one we're going to use. You have volunteered. Okay, so we're going to put them around. And, okay, so everyone look. And remember, you got to look very, very carefully. Okay, everyone ready? Are you ready? Okay. So here we go. This way. Now he's here. Here. Let's see. Of course, if he sees us, he's not even looking down. Oh, he is now. Watch his tongue and watch his eyes. This is why you're not in the wild. Guys see his eyes? Yeah, everyone catch that? Yeah, let's try that again, this time in slow motion. No, I can't do that. One more. You're going to record this, huh? I have this recorded, by the way, too, on my little Capital Naturalist channel, but here. All right, so this time, we'll do it in a little face. And if, sometimes you really see the eyes pop down 2 or 3 times, especially the bigger the food is. So you go here. Oh, now see the worms not moving. Yeah, the worms not moving. Oh, they moved? always tell the kids when they go back, think about them chewing their food with their, oh, you would belch. With, you know, with their food. So there you go.
Why do the eyes go down again?
They don't have the same kind of trauma, so the back of the eyes help to push the food down.
Push
so
it
you
down
can-
like a
Okay.
All right. Okay, so on that note,
Slow
oh,
motion.
you guys got to share these.
Oh, excellent, send it out.
Yeah, send it out, definitely copy me, so I can post it on my Captain Natural channel tonight. Okay, so, moving on. So here we go from that, and we're going to move on to something slightly different here. Let me tell you about, unfortunately, a story, a true story.
Sorry,
So
we're
right
watching
here.
your video, sorry.
So here is a very cool frog. It's very different from other frogs in a couple of ways. One, this is a completely aquatic frog. It does not come out of the water. It's flat-built. It's built for swimming and whatever. And they come from South Africa. There's about 5 different species, this genus Xenopus. I think it's also, they might have even changed that on me. But the really weird thing is that unlike, again, all other frogs, they have claws in their back feet. So they're African clawed frogs. They're also unusual. They'll eat stuff that doesn't move. So these were very popular for experiments and things like that. They use them for pregnancy tests. They're easy to make them breed, so they can do all sorts of genetic experiments with them because you can induce them to breed, time them and everything like that. On top of everything else, they're incredibly easy to maintain because, again, you can just push fish food and leave fish food. Having said that, they also taste really bad. So you can keep them in a fish tank, and the fish will nip it once, and then it's like, oh, I'm not eating that big. And so you can cohabitate them with other fish, which you wouldn't be able to do. As if you did that with some other frogs, they'd be fish food. So, so it's a very, very cool frog. Now, we were very surprised, and I was not originally part of this, but some folks might know Greg Zell, he was my predecessor. But many, many years ago, they found in a couple of our ponds here in Arlington African clawed frogs. Okay. Like I said, we get weird stuff in the ponds all the time. It's very sad, but true. And so it's like, well, it's an African frog, so the raccoons probably shouldn't eat it, but it'll get sick or something. But it'll die in the wintertime. Were we surprised when holes in the ice, and guess what? They're underneath, and they're breeding. The next year we had tadpoles. I was like, well, this isn't such a good thing. So Arlington County reported that, along with several other jurisdictions, that this was becoming a regular happening around Virginia. And Virginia finally outlawed the sale of African clawed frogs many, many years ago. Okay, flash forward, and all of a sudden we have a huge epidemic of dying frogs all over the world, okay? And for a while there, people were trying to figure out what is happening to these frogs. Turns out that there's several diseases, but the most critical of which is something called chytrid. And chytrid is unfortunately a fungal. It's a fungal thing, where what happens is the fungus develops on the skin of the frog. Remember this permeable, it has to be breathable skin? It interferes with that, and so the frog dies. In some species, the frog gets 100% mortality rate. To the point that in some places, the research would be there 1 year, they go back the next year, and every single frog would be dead. Worried people so much, this thing was called chytrid, that people started then going ahead of it because they found out that the water spread the spores, and the frogs, of course, are coming to the water. So they go ahead of it 100 kilometers every year to collect as many frogs as they can. Many of these now exist only in frog arks, if you will, in zoos, which that's the only place they have them now. Living is in these zoos because in the wild, you can't even let them go anymore because chytrid spread to there. So the only savior in the world for these things now is in some zoos. It's pretty bad. So they check records and so forth, but what happened? Where did it come from? We're getting clues about this. And there was a remarkable correlation where several places were either these things have been dumped or where the water from these animals have been released, where apparently there was many cases of chytrid. And then it turns out that apparently Xenopus frogs, clawed frogs, are remarkably resistant to chytrid. So it doesn't kill them, but it kills other things. And so the leading theory is that the reason this disease got all over different places was due to the introduction of the water or of this frog into those pools.
So they're carriers.
As they're carriers. And unfortunately, this is again chytrid. We find out that it was probably here in the 1970s. In fact, they go back to museum specimens in the 30s, and you find out that that this thing is still present. So this thing's been around for quite a while. It was just restricted to South Africa. Now, It's being released all over the place, and again, it affects at least 287 species in 37 countries, and there's over 100 species dead. It's strictly frogs right now, and that's some kind of saving grace, but it's killing all frogs. Some frogs, like coarse frogs, seem to be a little bit resistant. Other ones, like I said, it kills everyone without exception. So there's a new salamander one that's formed out, another chytrid in the same family, and that's really scaring people, to the point that in many places now it is illegal to transport salamanders across state lines, and even the zoos have incredibly strict quarantine requirements. It also means that almost all places that do surveys now, they're very careful about what you do. And one thing you don't do is you don't move animals from one place to another, okay? Which is what we don't want people doing, raising frogs, they get sick, and then from a school or whatever, you release them someplace, and what did you just do? You killed every frog in the pond, okay? Now, as if that wasn't bad enough, we know that this is spreading, and people just going to visit them, they carry the spores, it's on your boots, your dirty boots, you step into the water, the spores wash out, and guess what you just did? You just spread the spores in an area. When we went on Saturday, I told you I was out with Mike Hazlett doing some of his Burnham Pool things. What did we do when we switched bodies of water? We dipped our feet into, scrubbed them, washed our feet into 10% Clorox, bleach and whatever before we stepped over. What do we do with the nets? Rinse the nets out. This is standard protocol now for whenever you do any of these kinds of things. Why? Because people reptile enthusiasts, people who really like these things, and they're loving things to death, because what they didn't do is that when they went in there, they introduced a disease, and it'll kill them. Folks, even little things like that can happen. There's many other things. Ranavirus became a problem. And at first we were like, okay, well, Rana, again, remember a frog? So ranavirus, it affects frogs. Well, now we find out, well, it affects frogs, but it also affects some fish, and it affects some salamanders, and it affects some snakes, and it affects some turtles, and we're like, oh boy, this is not good. Again, another disease that's being spread. And so again, 20 different herp species. This is something that's really worrying people. There's lots of diseases and things like that, which is what we're worried about, and chytrid and ranavirus are the two big ones. We test every year the waters from this pond, Gulf Branch Pond, and a couple other places for the presence of chytrid and ranavirus. We were lucky enough to be part of a Smithsonian study at one point, well, actually 2 Smithsonian studies, and we got them to pick up the bill the first couple of times, saw how they did it, and now we do it ourselves. But you know what? We do this for good reason. We've been very successful in introducing, restoring frog populations to places where they used to be. We knew historically Bog had wood frogs and spring peepers and so forth, but they're all gone, okay? There might still be 1 or 2 great tree frogs here, but they're all gone. We built Burnham Pools, we've taken out invasives, and guess what? We tested the frogs here, moved some frogs over there, and what do we have now established there again? Colonies of spring peepers and wood frogs. But we don't want to, by trying to help, move a disease into another place and cause things. So they're doing these tests with the animals that they're going to be sharing. They're sharing tadpoles with schools. Why? Well, after they got a clean bill of health, that the frogs, that the stuff that we're giving them are actually healthy frogs. Hopefully they'll retest them again. But every year we're going to keep doing this before we use these for any of the kinds of things. Right?
What's the process of testing?
The process is easy. I got a nice little video on it. You take a toad. He doesn't like this. There's a Q-tip. You rub some of the slime and goo off of his belly. Put it into a little bag. Mail it off to a laboratory. Take another one for a different test. One's ranavirus, one's chytrid. Rub their little bellies again. Send it on off. And there it is. If one is sick in the population, the assumption is they're all sick. The bad news is when the Smithsonian did it the first time, we had a false positive. So they came back and said, we think your frogs are sick. Yeah, that was not a good thing. So luckily, we wouldn't have been able to do much about it, but look at the Smithsonian, so they had experts, and they were nice enough. We knew some of the people on staff. In fact, one used to work with us here, okay? And so they were nice enough to do some more tests and so forth, and then came back 6 months later telling us, hey, yeah, no, they're okay. This happens sometimes, and so forth. But, for a little while, they were like, well, that sucks. So, yeah. But anyways, you guys get the idea. Oh, so this is Tuffy. And Tuffy was the last of a very, very cool frog, okay? He was one of the gliding tree frogs, very cool. They had they spread their toes and everything out, their wide web feet, and they glide. They parachute from one tree to another. Even cooler, he's the only kind of frog in the world we ever know where they the father fed skin pieces to the tadpoles. They actually fed, not maternal care, paternal care, which is very, very rare. a sad day when we found out the population was being wiped out by chytrid. They managed to save a few. They could never figure out what triggered breeding in these frogs. So even though they tried for several years, they could never figure out. It wasn't the rain, it wasn't the humidity, it wasn't the temperature. They played with all these different stimuli to try to get them to breed. Never figured it out. And guess what? The last of that race died September 22nd, 2016. It's rare when we know exactly when a species completely disappears from the earth, but this is one of them. And when he did, we lost a very cool kind of frog. A frog that could glide. The only frog we ever found that showed paternal care of young, and it's unfortunately disappeared. And why? Because of the introduction of disease that wasn't even native to its country. Invasive species come in a variety of different frames, and they can enter a system in so many different ways. Which is why even some of the minor things we do, we have to be careful about. Sad note, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Do we have any idea how they tell their offspring or the siblings, how they can tell each other?
Well, apparently, again, it's through their skin, just like they detect fish and they can detect the algae. This isn't all species, right? But for toads, for example, they can tell their siblings probably because of the chemical factors of what they give out. There's a particular chemical signal, a mark that they give out that they can tell, and that's how they know. Just like fish give out certain things, and again, they can absorb it right through their skin. They can tell, hey, this has got fish in there. And it's just amazing. And some amphibians can do this and other ones can't. So, in toads, it's apparently specific enough. Oh, they can also tell, toads can also tell wood frogs, and there's a reason to tell wood frogs. Wood frogs are almost completely vegetarian. They make one big exception. They'll eat toad eggs, okay? They'll eat toad eggs. And since the wood frogs are there about a month before the wood frogs are, the wood frogs get a jump on the toads. And so the toads, when they go into water, if they can sense chemically that there's wood frog, tadpoles, or eggs in there, they think very careful about whether they're going to want to do that. They'll try to use another pool, which is why sometimes you find them in a tile rut or something like that. We get like, well, that wasn't a good spot. Well, may not have had too many alternatives. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, not all is bad news, and this is a little bit of good news. So a few years ago, 2008, on Staten Island of all places, brand new frog species was discovered. A story I heard by grad students who were out there doing studies with a professor, and who were told there, of course, there were both northern leopard frogs and southern leopard frogs possible there. They found the frogs. They listened to the call, which from you guys media participating in Frog Watch, one of the best ways to identify species is by call. And they're like, well, it doesn't sound like any of them. It sounds like it's croaking, okay? And so, coughing, I should say, not croaking. Sounds like it's coughing. So they called it to attention, and some herpetologists listened into it and said, okay, you're right. Doesn't sound right. Look back in the records, apparently a guy named Carl Caulfield back in 1937 said, I think I found the frog. But back then there wasn't any genetic tests or anything like that, and so he could not prove he had to be frog. We go back to 2008 and we find out that yes, it's a brand new species of frog, discovered in all places Staten Island by not professionals, but students, okay? Citizen science are still great things still enough to be discovered out there, even in some very, very urban locations, okay? And it's not the professionals who are doing all of it, all right? That's why a corps of informed volunteers is so incredibly important in park systems, like you guys. And why I tip my hat that you guys would like to find some interest in this and would help with the kinds of things that we do, all right? So we go around, and I looked for this one, and I was one of several people they asked to look, and I could not do it. I could not tell the difference. When you're in there and there's 1,000 frogs calling, and you're listening for that one particular call, yeah, I tried twice and said, you're talking to the wrong person. Ain't gonna be me. You need somebody who actually really knows what they're doing. But I tried, but we haven't found any locally yet, but they're now in 8 counties in Virginia. And so this species that we're still making brand new discoveries, that's a positive note. There's still some great things to be discovered and hopefully preserved out there, including the coughing frog, the Atlantic coast leopard
Which
frog.
parts of Virginia, please?
They're in the Tidewater area, I think in the Hampton Roads area mostly.
Coastal.
Yeah, coastal. And that's thus the Atlantic coast, that name for the frog.
Got it.
Well, it's also called coughing frog, so Caulfield's frog. Okay, so that's it. We're done with amphibians. I know I went pretty far over there. Luckily, you have till 5 o'clock, right?
You said what?
So, actually, what time do we have to? 11:30 or 12?
11:45 if you can do it.
Okay. I'll talk faster.
Oh my gosh.
It's 11:08. Go.
Reptiles and reptiles. So we have 6 different groups of reptiles, of which only the top 3 are found in our area. Here's my son with a really cool milk snake. And again, look, we have snakes, a lot of species. The biggest of all the reptile groups, the lizards, they make up the brunt of almost all of ours. And then the most primitive, well no, the second most primitive, which are less than 350 species, the turtles. Then we have some other groups which we do not have locally. There's 2 species of tuatara near New Zealand. They look like lizards, but they're different. Their morphology is completely different. Their teeth are different. They're born with a pineal eye, a little eye-detecting spot on their head. I mean, also they're incredibly long-lived. It takes them years to. It's just really, really cool animals. But they look like lizards. Yeah. What is that?
Godzilla?
That's what it should be, right? It could be Godzilla, but the tuatara, which I guess in Maori means something like spined animal or something. And then there's 25 different species of crocodilians. This is a spectacled caiman, but again, there's these alligators, crocodiles, gables, caimans, that kind of stuff. And then you got the funky worm lizards, the amphibians. Very strange. Most of them, again, legless. They have segmented bodies. They have very, very small eyes, but they have scales, which is different, of course, from the Sicilians. So these are the ones all over the world, just so you're aware of them. These are the ones that we're going to talk about. So the most primitive of the groups are the box turtles that are found locally, and we are lucky enough that Virginia has a whole wealth of them. 25 species, one of which is introduced, and Maryland has 20, one of which is introduced. So these are some really, really cool animals. Go back way back when. And what makes a turtle, of course? The shell. I mean, that's what makes it the similarity of you all have together. So let's look at some really common ones. So this is the box turtle, and again, it was reclassified just last year. They used to all be called eastern box turtles. They now broken down into subspecies or whatever, and ours is the woodland box turtle. Okay, Carolina. And what makes a box turtle? Well, a box turtle. And what do I do with these guys?
It's over the other side of the.
Oh, I moved it all the way over here. Oh, thank you. So how did a turtle get away from me? That's not very good. So here is a box turtle, and this guy has been here longer than his staff is here. He was here when I got here. This guy's over 30 years old, okay? The reason he was in captivity, like most of these animals have a sad story of why they're in captivity. This one lost a leg, and unfortunately, we don't know how he lost a leg, but he lost a leg. This is still, by the way, one of the few nature centers that still does animal rehabilitation, okay? Very few places still do that, but Arlington County, we're very proud we still have one of the few functioning rehabilitation centers in North Virginia. But once the leg is gone, of course, it doesn't grow back, and he needs to dig that in order to try to find a place to brumate, to overwinter. So no leg, not a good thing. So I'll bring him around, and again, normally this is a hinge here, and the hinge normally means that when you're not going in, are you? He's so used to people. This hinge would close, and he close up like a box, but he's not doing it. You can tell male box turtles from female box turtles. Usually have red eyes, and all turtles, males have longer tails than females, but of course that means you need to compare them. And since there are brown-eyed girls, brown-eyed boys too, the best way is if you look underneath on an adult turtle, if there's a dip, okay, dip on the plastron, the bottom part, then it is concave, it is a male. If it's straight or goes out a little bit, it's a female. This is so that he can fit, of course, on top of the shell of the female, okay? This is a male turtle, and you know, I'll bring him around, you guys can touch him, wash your hands, of course, after you touch any kind of animals. We always tell people that. You guys can see, you can even see where the name turtleneck came from, the loose spot of skin on his neck. So, again, and just, grab, you can touch his shell. That's pretty tough. I'll hold him if you don't mind. Yeah, just you can touch his shell, and the reason is, he kicks and scratches.
What's his name?
They call this guy Stumpy. None of the animals in most places have names. He grandfathered that in. Otherwise, we don't want to think of them as pets or anything like that, so none of the animals here usually have names, but a couple people have an exception to that, and this guy's is one of them, right? And this is Stumpy. Yeah. Again, he does kick and scratch a little bit, but it's not doing it on purpose. He just doesn't want to. He doesn't want me to be flying turtles. It's just not a natural thing. Yeah.
Are the patterns on the shells distinctive to that to Stumpy, right?
Yeah,
Can you
yeah,
identify
they're
it that way?
Yeah, and in
Okay.
general, the brighter colored ones, The brighter colored ones are generally the males too, and the females are usually lighter colored, but there's lots of exceptions to that. They're pretty neat little creature.
Zebra, fist bump.
Yeah, with that arm. But a neat little creature. These are omnivores, and they used to be incredibly common, but unfortunately between roads and people keeping them as pets, they're gone. Because even if you know how to keep them as a pet, turtles can breed well into, and again, this is one of the longest lived creatures we have around here. I think the record for a box turtle is 137 years, and who knows, I mean, maybe there's older ones than that. But if you take it out of the population, of course, even if you take care of them well, he no longer is producing any more to keep the population going. So between people taking them as pets in cars, really, and destruction of habitat, their really numbers have gone down very dramatically. They're omnivores. In most turtles, the younger they are, the more meat they eat. The older they are, the more plant material they eat. Okay? So same with these guys. Okay? So very neat little animals are our most common land turtle. Eastern painted turtle. This is the most common water turtle. And the easiest way to tell this one apart is it has two spots behind the head. So if you see two spots, if you see two spots behind the eye, that is a painted turtle. It's got other things too. There's like, you know, there's brightly colored edges to them or whatever. In flat-shelled water turtles, look for long nails. On flat-shelled water turtles, if you see really long nails, it's a male. Why? They do this underwater dance. It's kind of cool. The much smaller female gets in front of the much smaller male gets in front of the female, swims backwards and in front of it and whatever, showing off how long and pretty its nails are, back and forth. And if she's interested, then that's one thing. Most of the time, you know, it's like whack, zaps him out of the way, and she's much bigger than he is. So lucky he has a shell to protect him, and you know, they move on. But if you see long claws on the turtle, it is a male on flat-shelled water turtles. Yes.
Do they still do the convex or concave?
No,
thing or
no,
what? So
they do
it's
not.
just the
Because
nails on
because their
each
shells aren't as domed, that
Okay.
that only holds true for box turtles and some other terrestrial turtles. On water turtles, it doesn't hold true, but the long nails does. That holds true on flat-shelled water turtles. Yeah. Also, the long tail. Males have proportionally much longer tails than females, but not exactly a good field mark. You know, not going to see that very often.
Well, how can they swim? Do they have like a bladder?
They're webbed feet, and they're actually fairly buoyant. So they do have space inside there, and you know, so they do that. But they're remarkable swimmers. They can go in there and hold their breath for 20 minutes, so they can also stay underwater dramatically. So this is the second most common turtle that we have in Virginia, which is very unfortunate. It is the most widespread turtle in the whole world because it was the original pet store turtle. I've seen them in Honduras, I've seen them in Costa Rica, and I've seen them in the Caribbean islands. I've seen this turtle everywhere, except, you know, where he's supposed to be, the Ohio Basin, okay? So this guy has been introduced everywhere as the original pet store turtle. Usually you can tell them apart from other ones because of the red mark behind its head. However, on many water turtles, particularly males, the older they get, the more melanistic they get. They get darker and darker and darker, to the point that sometimes all the field marks start to turn dark. Okay, but in general, if you look for that red ear on it. And then this is a problem. This turtle is bigger than other turtles, so it outcompetes many of our turtles. There is an introduction of disease, and locally, very big problem, because this has been introduced in a tidewater area. We have Trichimea scripta, the yellow-bellied slider, of which good luck finding one now, which is actually a yellow-bellied slider. They're all almost been completely bred out of existence, and you end up with something weird looking like that, where it's a combination of the two, because the red-eared sliders outbreed a meat with all the yellow-bellied sliders, and you don't end up with pure yellow-bellied sliders anymore. So this is a big problem, and unfortunately these turtles are common everywhere. The most widespread turtle in the whole world because of the pet trade. And then we have the biggest of our local turtles, the snapping turtle. And snapping turtles, Serpentina, this isn't a good picture, they have a really, really long tail, okay? And that's the thing to them. Very, very tiny shell. In fact, their plastron, their bottom shell is tiny. They can't fit inside the shell. That means that their best defense is a good offense. In the water, though, they're incredibly docile. I remember, again, I worked at a pet store, I used to have to take care of an alligator snapping turtle. That's the biggest freshwater turtle we have in North America, 200 pounds. I had to go take care of Stonewall, and Stonewall's head was this big. And I remember I had all the cool jobs. I got to see if when new animals came in, if they were friendly. You know, I got all the great jobs. You know, besides cleaning tanks and when they told me your job is also to clean out Stonewall's tank, and this guy's sitting there, and you're like, oh no. And it's like, well, yes, you are. And they're incredibly docile. They do not are not aggressive at all in the water. But you get them on land, they're out of element. They're really scared.
Yeah.
And that's when they can bite. And their bite would be incredibly painful, right? Oh, so to show you how big and impressive this beast is, let's bring this guy out for you. Obviously a huge monster. This is a snapping turtle born probably this fall. And I'm bringing him around. He doesn't have an egg thing anymore. I want you to notice a couple of things. One, the bottom of his shell completely small. That's one big thing. He can't pull into his shell completely. The other thing is, Serpentina, how long his tail is. It's the longest tailed turtle that we have. This is a baby snapping turtle.
Is it true?
Well,
Not the little ones.
not the, I know it'd be incredibly painful. I know a guy who, a duck hunter, oh, you'd love this, a duck hunter who did not check his blind before he went to his blind. He had his waders on. He sat on a snapping turtle. Snapping turtle bit him, and even though he had thick plastic waders on, apparently he still bit into his skin. So, yeah, tiny, long tail. Oh yeah, absolutely.
It has a very long tail.
Yes, and that's the name Serpentina is given to him for that reason. Serpentina because the serpent-like tail.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's the longest tailed of all of our turtles. We should see tons of these. These rarely come out of the water. They don't bask very much. When they do, they bask in the water, and we should see a ton of these in Mountain Meadow.
Where'd you find this guy?
This guy came in. I believe the story again. Every one of these guys have a story. This guy, if I'm not mistaken, somebody was raking up leaves in their yard to clean up their yard, and guess what they accidentally turned over? This little guy. And then, lucky enough though, they were nice enough to realize, oh, this is not good, and so they brought the little guy over here, and he's spending the winter here. Soon it'll be warm enough that they can try to find a real home for this guy. But yeah, it got turned over when people were raking leaves in the fall. But it was so late in the fall, you couldn't let them go again. They're remarkably cold tolerant, by the way.
So we should call him Flipper.
All right.
Because he got flipped over.
Yeah. All right.
Melissa, can you say 2 words about how turtles breathe? Because I'm so impressed with their ability to stand in water.
Okay, so not only do they breathe, they've got, of course, the nostrils on water turtles right at the top, so you can barely break the surface, get a breath, and go back under and hold the breath that long. You got to remember a couple of things. One, everyone thinks that, reptiles and these kinds of primitive life forms, right? Being ectothermic, cold-blooded is considered a disadvantage. But there's many advantages to being cold-blooded. For one thing, your metabolism is not working as fast as other things. So you don't need as much of what are necessities for many other animals. In most cases, not so much the breathing, but this does help with their bodies. They don't use up, they don't need to energize their bodies much, but it does come in the case of food. Reptiles and amphibians can go months, even years without eating. Why? Because they're not burning up energy to keep their bodies warm. And if they're not burning up energy in their bodies to keep their bodies warm, they don't need much in the form of food to get energy again. So some snakes can go years without eating. There's a record, I have to verify this, but it was 5 years, 4 months that a boa constrictor at the turn of the century in London. Again, that was not a healthy animal. He was drinking, but he did die. No other animal I know of could do that. And that's one of the neat things about these animals is they can live a period of time. So this is a big advantage. This not having to metabolize things as quickly or whatever to keep your body going is a huge advantage, and I think that helps even with them being able to hold their breath underwater. But the other thing is that they, especially in, so in wintertime, everything slows down even more, and so they can stay underwater and not breathe much at all, but what they are breathing a lot of times is actually, believe it or not, water exchange to their, well, for lack of better words, their anus and so forth. And so that's how they actually get enough air into their system that they can actually survive. But why? Because their bodies are always doing nothing. It's wintertime. They're not producing much at all, but it's enough to keep them going. So again, remarkably adaptable animals. Oh, and by the way, even again, much like other turtles, these guys do like to eat meat, but they eat most of their meat when they're young. Later on, they eat a ton of plant life. We will probably, if enough of the weeds are out there or whatever, see snapping turtles. When we watch them long enough, they will be eating plants. Everyone assumes that they're out eating, I want to get this and that. They mostly, a lot of their meal is vegetarian once they're big. So anyway, nice big turtle, very cool. Lizards, we're going to go very quickly over this. Most of the lizards we have here are called skinks, and there's 3 species, the most common of which is 5-lined, but not all, 3 of our 4 skink species have stripes on them and blue tails when they're babies, which means if you see any of them, you could call it a skink, but you probably couldn't call it much more than that. Because to identify them when they're young as to whether or not they're a broadhead, a southeastern 5-line, or a 5-line, you need to look at the scales underneath its eyes or how many rows of scales are underneath its tail. Not a good field marker, okay? So again, the book has some good stuff. The website on the Virginia Herpetology has some great stuff. But again, the blue tail, it's probably a lure. It's a distraction device. It sits there, and it's the first thing their predator sees. Predator grabs it. It wiggles, it breaks at a predetermined point. It wiggles like crazy, and so the animal thinks he's got it. He fights it. He's eating it, but the lizard gets away. The lizard will eventually grow a very plain, not very movable tail, so it does grow it back, and it does cost the lizard something. If it's a reproductive female, if it loses its tail, it can't produce as many eggs, but overall, you'd rather lose your tail than lose your life, okay? So there is some belief that for some reason, so cats, of course, outdoor cats are really bad news, okay? Not a good thing. When they catch skinks and actually eat them, some of them have gotten very sick. So it's actually believed that some people actually believe that the tail might even be a warning to certain species that they don't taste good, but most things can eat skinks, okay? So again, if you can get them and you can count the scales underneath their eyes, great. You can figure out, yeah, or in your book, you look at the last page of that lizard section, you can see a part underneath the tail. Not a good field mark, okay? We were lucky enough for the bio blitz that we did down here at Dykes Marsh. We found one where a bike had hit it. So guess what? We actually could say, whoa, and somebody called us on it. Well, how could you possibly say what species it was? Well, we can tell you why, because he was not moving. We were able to count scales and everything, but don't count that as it. Most of the time you see it, whatever, it's a blue-tailed little line striped lizard, it's a skink. Be happy with that. If you really want to play the odds, 80% of them are 5-line skinks. Pretty good bet, but yeah. Okay, snakes. So again, aren't we blessed, much like everything else we've seen so far, that Virginia has many more species than Maryland. Surprise! And here we'll talk about the most common ones. The absolute most common snake that we have in all of Virginia is the northern brown snake. Something very important to say with snakes, but many of these animals, in particular like tree frog, one word. That designates it. It's not a frog in a tree, that it is in that family of frogs, tree frogs. This same thing. Brown snake as one word tells you it is in that family of snakes, okay? Brown snake to a person when they see it. So they've standardized the common names so that they actually do mean something, all right? They really do. So the common names are standardized, as are the scientific names. The things used in the book are the ones that are most accepted by 3 of the most prominent herpetological naming societies, and that's what I chose to go with, which is what the Virginia Herpetological Society goes with, okay? So this is the most common of all of our snakes, but it's also so commonly misidentified because any day, any time now, somebody finds a snake with a dark head and a little pattern on it, copperhead, and they kill it. This thing is rarely a foot long, okay? It's tiny, eats mostly worms. It's a very neat little snake, but every fall, people find them, the gardeners usually, or in a window, somebody turns over the mulch pile and they find one of these, freak out, and they bring one in that's been hacked in half. What is this? It's dead. That's what it is. But then we let them know that it's not. That, it's not. If you do what you do look for is the dark head, and the dots along its back are usually in pairs. So if we can turn the lights on, it just so happens that guess what? Somebody was gardening and found something Believe it or not, this is a mature. Can it grow more? Yes, but this is a mature northern brown snake. When they're born, they're the size of a toothpick. This is a northern brown snake. Yep. And notice the dark head, paired dots along the back. Northern brown snake.
So even though the copperheads get, well, a little bit, well, not a little bit, bigger in general, these smaller snakes are still mistaken for copperheads?
Yeah, all the time.
They didn't have.
They don't.
It's not just that.
Colors
Yeah,
either.
it's not just that.
Look
There's
like
so much.
copperheads,
Okay, in general, any snake that has a pattern, someone's going to tell you it's poisonous, which is another big nomenclature, because you should not say poisonous either. But we'll go into that in a second too. But a beautiful little snake. I'll hold on to him because when holding on to animals. I learned this from my father, who was a hunter. Anyway, so he had a different way of explaining it. But the way I'd like to explain it to you is the way he told me, and that is, think of this as being like, anytime you hold any kinds of animals, as being something as delicate as a bird. Where if you squeeze too hard, you hurt it. If you don't hold it well enough, it's gone. Okay? So with practice, you really get good at knowing just what the right amount of pressure. You see, this guy's not even distressed. He's not musking, which is good. I'd much rather get bit by almost any snake that's not venomous than musk. Musk, they let the stuff out of their cloaca, they rub it all over you, it smells terrible. To the point that I used to have extra, when I worked at the nature center, used to have an extra shirt and stuff so I could always change. Nothing's as nasty as getting musked by a snake, and then having to go to a meeting and sitting next to everybody. Yeah.
It's a new cologne.
New cologne. Oh, the snake. All right, so that's northern brown, the most common snake that we have here. Worm snakes are the most common woodland snake, and it's really cool. It's a very plain-looking snake, unless you turn it over, in which case its belly is pink. The younger it is, the pinker the belly. The older it is, the more blander it is, but they always have some kind of pink to the belly. This can be an incredibly common snake when you do bio blitzes and stuff like that, but only in woodland situations, okay? Which is why it might be very common, but only in the woods. Outside of the woods, you just don't find it. This is pretty much a woodland snake. So the most commonly seen snake, though, is this guy, the eastern rat snake, what people used to call black rat snake. They combine them all together, and it's no longer called the black rat snake. It's now called the eastern rat snake. And again, notice the word. Rat snake is one word, just like worm snake is one word. This implies that it's not a snake that eats rats, strictly, because all big snakes can. No, this guy is in that family of snakes. And when they're first born, they have a pattern to them. And I don't know how many times I've had people bring in these guys because they're great masters of deception. When they're first born, they have a pattern to them, and what do? They sit there, and once they're discovered, they curl up in the classic S shape so they can strike. They shake their tail. About half of our snakes vibrate their tail. What does that sound like? A rattlesnake. And then they start striking. And that's it. A person sees a snake that's rattling with a pattern, and it's trying to bite them. What do? They kill it. What used to be a great trick, a fox comes over and you bluff it. You pretend like you're the biggest, baddest thing around, and it leaves you alone. Now it's just the exact worst thing you could possibly do, because that is usually a death sentence for this. Because most people realize that that's not a venomous snake, but it has to go through this before it gets to that. That's what a baby wolf looks like. Best way to identify a young rat snake, and this includes red rat snakes too, pretty much most of the rat snake family, is they have a unibrow, okay? They have a little stripe that connects to between both eyes, okay? So that is how you can tell it. The older it is, the darker it gets, but always retains just a little bit of pattern on its belly with white and black. That's how you tell it apart from the much less common but easily mistaken northern black racer. And racers are called racers for a real good reason. They are fast, okay? I'll find a snake, and you can usually tell the demeanor of a snake. Okay, this one, if you deal with animals long enough, you can kind of read what they're going to do. And you always make mistakes. That keeps life interesting. But, and luckily I've not made any mistakes with venomous animals, but I don't mess with them very much. Old saying amongst herpetologists, okay, and people who deal with hot animals, venomous animals, there are two kinds of people, There are those who got bit, and those who got tagged, and those who are going to get tagged. Just like there are bold snake handlers and there are old snake handlers. There are no old bold snake handlers, okay? And my wife screams at me every time I grab a snake in Latin America. You know? Especially when the guide tells me don't do it. But most of these guides, it's unfortunate, but in many of these countries, if it's a snake, it automatically is dangerous. And I don't know how many times I've had to prove it. And they then convinced the whole group there that it's a bad snake and whatever, they all that terminology. And so I sometimes feel obligated to show them that they're wrong. And my wife is furious every time I grab a snake to prove that it's not venomous, okay? But luckily, I usually investigate what are the venomous snakes of where we're going, yeah. But anyways, this thing, so I can find a black rat snake about half the time, they won't bite. I know I can grab it, and it's not gonna bite and probably not musk me, okay? And the bite, yeah, little teeth marks, I mean, little tiny things. Not a big deal, it's like a sticker bush, okay? Just like a little sticker bush. They're very small teeth. But the musk, ugh. These guys, you grab one, he will always grab you back. Black racers are incredibly aggressive defensively. They won't go after you, but they definitely want you to let them go. So they'll musk and they'll strike them, whatever. So they're very, very fast. They're not flat bottomed like the other one, and their belly is dark rather than black and white like you may have noticed on the rat snake. Okay? When they're young, they don't have the unibrow, but they have a huge eye, and the reason is, oh, now it works. These are diurnal hunters. Unlike their rat snake and stuff like that, this guy comes out during the day, and so he needs to. In fact, it's really cool. One of their best ways of seeing them is their periscope. They go through the long grass and they raise their head, and all you see is just the head coming through. Periscoping, because they're very visual-oriented things. These are not nighttime animals. Okay? Well, the black rat snake is a nighttime animal, so there is that. But they're really cool little animals. One big thing, and again, just about taxonomy, scientific name, culebra. Great, love that. Because in Spanish, culebra is snake. So it's a snake. It is in the most common family of snakes, the colubrids. And it is constrictor, which would imply that it constricts. Somebody screwed up. Somebody thought they found this one, because it's also black, named it Colubra constrictor, and because of the freaky ways of proper naming of things, the first person to name it or whatever and prove that that they were the first ones to find it, they stay with the scientific name. So this normally a scientific name is a great way of telling you about the snake. Like that worm snake, its scientific name is the specific name is amenable, friendly. They never bite. Okay. Yep. This thing constrictor, it never constricts. Okay? It eats its food live and kicking. So even scientific names, folks make mistakes and then they're stuck for history. So this is not a constrictor to spell it.
So the rat snake is the one that
It's a constrictor, yeah. If somebody, that looks a lot like that. Somebody 100 years ago thought that's what it was. You know, there was different times back then. So northern ringneck, this is a dark snake, and again, easy to tell apart because they have a ring around their neck. And there's a couple kinds. We only have northern here. The southern doesn't have a complete ring. And then it has the bright colored belly. Okay, beautiful snake, which you can still find mostly in wood piles and things like that. And then this is the most misidentified snake in North America, the northern water snake. Yep, I don't know how many people, it's a water moccasin, cottonmouth. We're too far north for those, okay guys? We do not have them around here, despite what every fisherman tells you, okay?
Is that you being bitten by?
That is me, and that is actually may have been a Fairfax Master Naturalist, I don't know. Yeah, somebody was nice enough to take that picture of that thing holding on to me. And yeah, in fact, it's messed up here. It was Jean, I forget her name now, but she took it for me and let me have it. And the reason I wanted to show you is one, look how big it could open its mouth, and the other thing is one thing that they always have are these crescent marks on their belly. Otherwise, this is an incredibly variable snake. They generally have the dark bands are usually thick on the side and skinny, thick on the top and skinny on the sides, but they're sometimes so hard to see, and the tannins, and especially in slow rivers and waters like that, can stain them, so it's very difficult to see. But if you see a water snake that has some kind of pattern like this in the water, it's going to be a northern water snake. You go further south in Virginia, there's a couple other kinds, but this is the northern water snake. They do not like for you to mess with them, okay? They usually swim away, but every once in a while they try to get into your boat with you. Why? Well, they're just trying to get out of the water. And they don't understand why you don't get off the island, okay? But that really freaks the boatmen out, okay? And if you do try to grab them, they will bite you, and because their teeth are so sharp to hold on to fish, they have a fairly painful bite. The other thing is they have an anticoagulant in their bite. So if they do draw blood, it looks bad, okay? But it's a very small animal and whatever. It's not a big deal. I would rather, and again, but worse, they will musk you, and their musk is horrible. Plus, they crap on you. I mean, they just and they rub it all over you. They rip it or yeah. So you will forgive me if we find some of these hunting meadows. If it doesn't look like the perfect opportunity that I can restrain the thing, I'm not gonna grab them because then you have to put up with me for the rest of the day. Just saying. Yeah, Ian.
Is this another one of like the snakes like as they get older, like they get a little harder to differentiate because they get darker?
They get not so well. In some cases, yes, their pattern disappears a little bit as they get older, but a lot of times it has to do just because they're in that especially tannic waters and whatever, they get stained.
Okay.
They get stained in water. So it's very different. Now we are really weird. In Fairfax County, there's a couple places where they have unusual populations of these where they don't have the patterns either. We're in a weird part of the state where we have some funky ones, okay? But in general, you see a pattern of snake in the water, it's gonna be a northern water snake. Okay, garter snake. This is our state reptile as of February 2016. This is the most cold tolerant snake you can find. 3 of them we found on Saturday when I was with Hazlett and his Burnham Pool crew. Again, they usually have stripes along the side, though I found a beautiful checkered one that did not have the stripes. But generally a pattern, generally stripes on the side. Then you see their face, and they usually stare at you. So it's actually fairly easy to see, believe it or not. Their scales are outlined in black, so you actually see that they have the outside of the scales are black, and that's a good field mark. Because this looks a lot like it, ribbon snake, which is a frog-eating snake with a really long tail. This is also over in Huntley, but it has a white eye spot in front of it and doesn't have the stripes underneath its eyes. Okay, it doesn't have the outlined scales or whatever. A very, very cool little snake. I hope we see these at Huntley. They should be. It's one of their hotbeds for these guys. And again, these thrash around and do all sorts of stuff, but they rarely bite. So I'll grab this one. Okay. And then we'll wrap up with the last of the snake sense because everyone's terrified of copperheads. Okay. And copperhead is the only venomous snake we have in the DC area. You gotta go up in the mountains to find rattlesnakes. We have timber rattlers. We don't have any other kind of rattlers in North America. In Virginia, except timber rattlers. You go down south in tidewater, you got canebrakes. Canebrake rattlesnakes used to be considered a different species. Now they're just a coastal form of timber rattlers. And again, if you get down south near the North Carolina border, we got water moccasins. But this is the only venomous snake we have otherwise. I said venomous, and again, the differentiation is very important. If it is injected into you, so a stinger or a fang mark or something like that, then it is venom. Okay, if it's absorbed or ingested, it is poison. You can eat rattlesnake steak because rattlesnakes are not poisonous; they are venomous. Okay, so poison, you're consuming it, ingesting it, or absorbing it. Venom, it's getting injected by a stinger or fangs, okay? There you go. Okay, that's a big difference. So this is the only one we have. And a lot of people will say, wow, you know what you need to look at? Most of these guys are the shape of their head. And it's true. Because they have these big venom glands, which are basically salivary glands, these big saliva glands, they need a bigger head to put away the fangs and to make up for the big glands there. But many snakes flatten out. Water snakes are notorious for doing this. So are garter snakes. They flatten out and they look like their heads are really diamond shaped or whatever you want to call it, right? And so people assume that's what the case. So that's not a really good field mark. They're also pit vipers, okay? And pit vipers can detect heat. Some kinds of boas do it too, but it's different. They have rows. These guys have 2 pits, which is how they detect the heat. But of course, you know, that's not exactly a good field mark, right? The other thing is, a lot of people tell you, they have the cat-like eyes, the vertical pupils, okay? Well, if you're staring into its eyes, you're probably way too close. So I don't suggest you go with these. Now, the face mark is a little bit easier. It's light below the eye, dark above the eye. That is actually remarkably easy to see on these snakes. But the best thing is, since it's the only venomous snake we have, is to look at the pattern. Oh, there's other things too. If it's a baby snake, for the first year or two, they have a yellow-green tip of their tail called a coneflowers. It's very cool. They wiggle it, and to an unsuspecting salamander or skink, it looks like an inchworm. So they wiggle it, and the food comes to them. And when they get big enough, they lose that. So cottonmouths and copperheads have that, but it disappears after the first year or two. Otherwise, though, the pattern on it, it's usually set up so that well, it's easier here to bring this around. And this is kind of, I think it's just kind of a general thing, but it's kind of like a saddle mark, butterfly wings, some people call it figure eights, saddlebags. It's skinny at the top and then widens along the side. And not all of them do that way, but many of them. Skinny at the top, wide on the side. And that's usually, a pretty good field mark when you find these things. They are not aggressive. They are not aggressive at all. Many times if people step next to one and it hasn't struck you. And even when they do, about 30% of strikes, no, even more than that. I've heard as much as 50, but 30% probably for sure. 30% of bites, especially the older snakes, not baby snakes, are dry bites. They don't even envenomate you. They do not. And many animals can do that. Venom, it costs them to make this. So you don't want to use it all up. So sometimes they give you a warning bite, believe it or not. They'll bite you, and it's a warning bite. You get one warning, okay? It will actually not envenomate you, and that happens more often than you think. Younger snakes, they haven't learned as well, and for them, almost anything can be a potential danger. So for them, sometimes it's an all or nothing type of thing, which is why some people say that smaller snakes are more dangerous than the older ones. Why? The older ones figured out, I don't want to waste this. Sometimes, I can just bluff my way out of this. A young snake, he hasn't learned this yet, and anything can hurt it, so it goes all or nothing and just injects you, okay? If you do get bit or something like that, again, it's very rare. There's never been a fatality in Virginia. It's only been a couple in the whole country, and some of those were some really poor luck. I mean, really. Down in Texas, one poor guy fell into a hibernaculum where a whole bunch of them were overwintering together. That's just not good luck. It's not good luck. Okay. So he got bit umpteen times, okay? So, yeah. But otherwise, does cause tissue damage. They used to call them stump rotters up in in countryside sometimes or whatever, because they will cause physical damage, but they won't kill you or anything like that. Best thing you can do, your best medication, none of this cutting and sucking poison out. Imagine if you have a cut in your mouth or something. Now you've ingested the venom where? Near your brain. Not good, okay? No. So, none of the sucking the poison out and this kind of junk. You need to, you can restrict it a little bit and get to the hospital. They will normally not even give you any anti-venom, okay? Why? Some of the anti-venom is made from horse serum, and some people have a very allergic reaction to it. You're not going to die from a copperhead bite, but you could die from an allergic reaction to a medication. So unless there's some real reason, they give you some painkiller or stuff like that, but it's usually best. They're coming up with a new pyroviolent variety, which you don't even have to know the species, and it'll work for pretty much all over pit vipers and anywhere in North America, but that's still in experimental stages, okay? But there you go. Now, folks, I am done. Again, if anyone wants extra copies of the book, I do have some more. Otherwise, I'll look forward to seeing everybody at Huntley Meadows. It should be a great, great time, and we hope we'll be able to see all sorts of neat stuff when we're out there. There's also questions. Thank you.
How common is the hognose?
Oh, very uncommon. And the reason it's uncommon, we used to have a hognose, and I love that. The defensive reaction, because it's the one that puffs, it puffs up, it can really flatten its head out. It goes like this, and you're like, looks like a cobra. And this thing strikes at you, and it hisses like crazy, rattles its tail, and it's just so like, and it's just a very scary looking thing, but it never strikes you. You can sit there, and I used to do this with the thing, and it's one of those things, it's kind of hard not to jump when something strikes at you, but I got better at it. I'd sit there, and it would come at me, and it would never hit me, okay? Or if it did, it never opened its mouth. Why? As soon as it strikes you, it's bluffing, okay? But it's a toad eater. So if there are no toads, if there aren't sufficient number of toads, you will not have hognoses. And they have an upturned tip of the nose. You can see it in your book. That's why it's called hognose, okay? But if only places with lots of toads can supply them. Lucky thing is, Huntley Meadows does have some. Our odds of finding one very, very slim. But if we can find one, that's a good spot for it. Yes, ma'am.
How many of the snakes or any other reptiles do live in live births?
Oh, about almost half the snakes in Virginia, but it's not common worldwide. Right. Worldwide, most snakes lay eggs, okay, and the eggs are papery, it's the python egg. They're leathery or whatever. Boas give live birth, boa baby. Pythons lay so they're like that. But in Virginia, almost half of our snakes, maybe at least a third of them, if not more, actually give live birth, which is, again, something kind of neat about just the diversity we have here. All right, yes, sir.
So you see big snakes on the rocks down
along the bow.
Yep, northern water snakes basking, and the big ones are the females. The smaller ones are either young females or males. In that kind of snake, the females are twice as large as the males. And it's really cool. I mean, boas, same thing. Can you imagine anacondas? I've heard about these mating balls, or whatever. Can you imagine a 14, 15 foot anaconda with 5 or 6, 7 and 8 foot males all writhing ball? They call it a mating ball. And I mean, it's just amazing. I've seen that with water snakes. And again, it's amazing. Now I can only imagine something that's a 15 foot snake. Yeah. All right. Well, oh yes, one last one.
How common is it to see corn snakes around here?
They're gone from Arlington.
Oh, they
and
are?
the last time they found one in Fairfax on the western edge was maybe 5 years ago.
Oh,
They keep hoping they find them, but and they might, because these are fossorial snakes. They go underground, so you rarely see them, okay? But the bad news is they haven't seen one in 5 years. People are looking for them.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's really unfortunate. The corn snake in Northern Virginia, in Fairfax and Arlington, is probably no longer here. Just like the king snake is gone from Arlington, but we still have them in Fairfax.
King
Right.
snakes are in Fairfax?
There are king snakes in
Oh,
Fairfax,
okay.
and there's some nice ones over. They were two mating in one right by the tower. We'll go by and hunt them.
Is it
yeah,
California king snakes that are here?
Nope, ours is the eastern king, or what they call the chain king.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right.
Do you want to take a second at Huntley Meadows to do City Nature Challenge?
Yes.
You're going to help us out with that?
Yeah, and I'm no pro like Ken is, but what I encourage you guys to do, we'll take some pictures, and if you can, we can enter it right there. But it's potty connection or something. You might as well just take the pictures, and you don't have to stay in one place for too long. And then when you go home, just enter it from home. But all you do is, first of all, before you go there, hopefully you guys will register with the City Nature Challenge program. And so any observation you make automatically when you enter it will go into there. And what we're hoping to do is to place very high in the DC area as part of it's one of the cities. There's over 80 cities now participating worldwide. And granted, it'll be tough to beat a Brazilian city, okay, where you go out the door and it's 1,000 species. But by sheer numbers, it's based on how many people participate as well as how many species. So it'll be great. So I hope we all see some cool stuff. Take some pictures.
So we can be taking pictures as we go.
Yeah, take pictures as you go and then enter them at home. That's
Yeah,
what I
and
do.
then if you go home and you want to either stay after the field trip at Huntley Meadows, now this is in 2 weeks, this
Yeah.
is not next week. Either stay,
Yeah.
hang around a little longer, or go home and enter in your observations into iNaturalist from home. If you promise to do it, you can earn an hour of Armin volunteer time. That would be considered citizen science.
It is. And good stuff. Yeah, and we can explain more about that, but if you guys probably already heard from Ken, this stuff is data mined. You don't even know which researchers are getting that data, and you're supplying them with information. That's the beauty of crowdsourcing and data mining information. I may just say I just found this, but to somebody it might be one little piece of data that he really needed for a study. So, great.
So thank you.
And Noreen, one more thing, if anybody is interested in writing about it,
Yeah.
let me know, because,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I'm working with Kasha on the blog, so if anybody wants to write something, they can send it in to me, Lisa Stern, or to Kasha, and we'll polish it up and we'll put it on the blog.
And of course, you want to really see a good blog, check out the Capital Natural.
Yes, it's video as well as.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, folks. I'll be around for a little while.